Witnessing a high-level battle involving the other possessor of his unique power would help both problems. Hey now, Keisuke said. I'll tell you all about it later, when we practice, and I'm sure you can find something to do for the next few hours. His words trailed off as he appeared to sense something familiar across the street. Then he smiled widely. Hey there, Hinata-san. He called, how are you this afternoon? Naruto and Sakura turned around and, sure enough, there was Hyuga Hinata on the other side of the street, several bags in her arms from the store she had just exited and sporting a deer in the headlights look in her pale eyes. Ah, Keisuke-san, Sakura. Naruto-kun. Oi, Hinata, yelled the blonde. What's up? The warm smile upon Naruto's face did not escape either Keisuke or Sakura, and the two of them exchanged meaningful grins. For a moment, nobody could find anything to say. Sakura was the first to break the short silence. Hinata-chan, heading home for the day? Hinata gathered herself, shook off her surprise, and said, Hi, I am going home, but then I will be meeting Shino-kun and Kiba-kun for practice. Anyo, Keisuke-san, you live here now? Keisuke nodded. Yes, I've just finished moving in. A big place for one person, but the new residential area that's being built doesn't have any free houses right now. Hokage-sama will continue to have the property cleaned and maintained for me while I live here. It's very comfortable. Ah, I see. Hinata said, struggling to keep her eyes from wandering anywhere but to Naruto. They had not spoken since the reunion party. Hinata was still trying to figure out what she wanted to do about the fact that Naruto had returned. Keisuke smiled again. Well, I've got to get going. Say, Hinata-san, why don't you have Naruto go with you to your practice session? He's been bored these past few days, and could use a good workout. Among other things, Keisuke thought. Hinata froze. This was as good an opportunity as any to show Naruto how far she'd come in 3 years, but... Anyo. Sakura joined in. I think that's a great idea, Keisuke-san. Naruto, we'll catch up some more later, maybe after Kakashi-sensei is better. I need to get back to Tsunade-sama. Yane. Sayonara, said Keisuke. Both of them walked away, back towards the Hokage Tower. They left behind a grinning Naruto and Hinata, who watched them go, regarding them both with hurt looks, like they'd betrayed her. Then Naruto walked forward. Well, Hinata, should we get going? I'll help you lug this stuff back to your place, and then we can do some catching up of our own on the way to practice, huh? Keisuke walked alongside Sakura down the street. The streets near Hokage Tower were busy despite the looming clouds, which still had yet to drop any rain. Those people nearest them gave them wide berth. Sakura was the respected apprentice of Godem Hokage, and Keisuke was a stranger, though he somehow, amazingly, wore the Konoha leaf after being there only a few short days. They walked unmolested, and their talk was uninterrupted. So, Sakura-san, Keisuke began, were Hinata-san and Naruto like this before? Not at all, replied Sakura. Though, there was definitely a foundation for it by the time Naruto left. Hinata-chan's loved him for as long as I've known them both, and Naruto started acting very kind to her after our first Chunin exam. I wouldn't have been surprised if they'd gotten together after a while, but... Then Naruto left. Keisuke finished. Yeah. Keisuke pondered for a moment. Well, I can't say I'm not glad that he did leave. After all, if he hadn't I'd probably still be off in the less known parts of the world, sitting on my hands, letting life pass me by. Then there's Haruka, who's been wasting her time almost since she could walk. If not for Naruto, I would have been stuck with a bottle of sake for a practice partner. And without such a nice girlfriend, Sakura commented. She'd assumed, from the way Haruka had expressed her appreciation for Keisuke's skill and her satisfaction with him as a partner, that the two of them were together. But Keisuke just stared at her like she'd broken his favorite coffee mug. Ehehe. Sakura changed the subject back to Naruto and Hinata, sensing that this was dangerous ground. So, Keisuke-san, do you think they're going to have time for a relationship now? Putting a nonchalant look on his face, Keisuke bought into the change of subject. I'd say it's possible. Granted, there's still the matter of your other teammate, Sasuke, to deal with, and much of his time is devoted to strengthening himself for that purpose. And now that Akatsuki seems to be on the move, his reasons are twofold. But Hokage-sama doesn't seem to want to send him anywhere at the moment, for reasons she hasn't yet explained, so he's confined to Konoha to train. With that said, it's likely that Naruto will have plenty of time on his hands for training. And for Hinata-san, if that's the way it happens. Personally, I hope it does, for multiple reasons. Sakura stopped walking and gave Keisuke a questioning look. Multiple reasons? Keisuke looked over his shoulder, and lowered his voice a little. It's true that I want Naruto to be happy. He's become my second family, a driving force for my life. I know that Hinata can be useful to him, as a fighting partner as much as a lover. If Haruka's told you anything about the potential of the Rokujuyan Ryude and the Byakugan together, you know of what I speak. In fact, Haruka had told Sakura quite a bit about that subject, in great detail, on their trek from Suna to Konoha. She had to agree that if it was true, then it was very impressive. But, truth be told, I have an ulterior motive, he said. With 3 exceptions, and 3 only, I despise the Hyuga. Not for their individual character, mind you, Haruka and Hinata-san both have shown me the potential for goodness in them. No, I hate them for their clan-wide capitulation to their blasted system of preservation. They've gone so far as to place a curse on their own blood, on the foreheads of their branch house members, a curse which they can use to kill. And kill they do, to preserve their precious Byakugan. It's senseless. They sacrifice their own kinsmen to a life of servitude and pain and, if they deem it necessary, death. All for the sake of protecting what they consider more holy than life itself. Their bloodline limit Dujutsu, which is no more holy than the demon within a Jinchuriki. Sakura stared. She'd never heard anyone speak so passionately against the Hyuga clan. Certainly, she wouldn't have chosen that system herself, but the Hyuga were the Hyuga. They were only one family, and a powerful one at that. So they were left alone, either out of fear or lack of real concern. Keisuke-san, she asked, why should you be concerned with the Hyuga? I mean, they're only one family out of hundreds in Konoha. They aren't forcing their methods on anyone else. Why is it your problem? I'm curious. Keisuke's face went ashen, then stony. I have a certain attachment to them, he answered. Not by my choice, but the matter was out of my hands. He clenched his fists. Sakura began to think that perhaps this wasn't easy for him to talk about. She pursued his reasons no further. I don't know why I'm telling you this, Sakura-san. Jiraiya is the only one I've told before, and he refused to be involved. I fear letting Haruka or Naruto know. Naruto doesn't like being manipulated, and Haruka, as far as I know, cares little for clan politics. She could mock me, but you, Sakura-san, a good friend of Naruto and, apparently, of Hinata-san, you can be trusted. You can be a help to me without being affected by the consequences of failure. I ask only one thing. You must not tell either Naruto or Haruka. If they must know, I will tell them, when I feel I need to. But for now, I prefer my manipulations to remain secret. Sakura took in all of this, and felt her head start hurting. As if there weren't enough complications in her life, here was Naruto dumping more into it through one of his friends. Yet she endeavored to be stoic. Suppressing her headache, she nodded for him to continue. Keisuke took the nod and went on. Naruto and Haruka have told me that Hinata-san is to inherit the seat of power in the Hyuga clan. As you said, it seems likely that she and Naruto could get together. My hope is that, if that relationship progresses, Naruto will marry into the Hyuga clan, where he can help Hinata-san to cast down the system of main and branch houses. Keisuke saw the look of concern on Sakura's face, and knew what she was thinking. I know. It's not as easy as I'd like it to be. Hiyashi has shown a little of his better half by acknowledging his daughter, but there is still little chance that he would accept someone like Naruto into the family. There will be much resistance, possibly to the point of violence, from the Hyuga clan. Getting Naruto to go pursue Hinata will be tough in itself. He's still working on Sasuke, and likely won't turn his attention anyplace else for very long. And while Akatsuki threatens, there won't be many safe environments for Naruto or anyone who attaches themselves to him. And even if it gets that far, undoing eons of tradition, even bad tradition, will prove almost impossible. Not to mention the fact that Naruto is completely clueless about Hinata's feelings. So they'll need help, Sakura concluded. Keisuke nodded. Yes, a great deal, lots of help. A long pause occurred, which neither seemed to have the will to break. Finally, the clouds above them parted for just a moment, allowing a sliver of sunlight to break through.
It illuminated the distant Hyuga compound. Seeing it, Sakura found her voice.
Hinata-chan has been waiting long enough for Naruto. I know that I'll have to wait a lot longer. The best I can do is to see my teammate and my friend find their happiness. If for nothing else, I'll help you for their sake, Keisuke-san. But the Hyuga clan is your problem.
Nor would I ask you to make it yours, Keisuke said, bowing his head in thanks. It's enough that you do what you can. Who knows, maybe the power that they find in each other can help us retrieve Sasuke, stop Akatsuki, and all this complicated misery. Sakura inclined her own head. There are two people I think you should talk to. One is Neji, the branch member you met at the reunion party. The second is Haruka-san. Even if she doesn't care for her clan, she might help you if you ask the right way.
I appreciate your help, Sakura-san. I'm sorry for keeping you from your mistress. It's nothing. Yane, Keisuke-san. She walked into the tower. Keisuke stood alone for a moment, smiling to himself. Then he went into the building himself. He'd won himself an ally, but it would be wise to win himself the Junin rank before he went any further. A clear, cool stream that bubbled up from its source not far from the mountain of the Hokage monument flowed tranquilly through a dark, secluded grove of evergreens. The trees were ancient, their mighty boughs reaching hundreds of feet upward, intertwining with each other and forming a canopy that nearly hid the whole sky from view. The wide trunks, all wider in diameter than most men, were tall and then some, ringed this particular section of the stream almost like a fortified wall, and the tall, thorny bushes between deterred most people and animals from trying to enter. But Haruka, who had discovered it in her early childhood and often come here to play, was one of the few who could find the place where the thick ivy concealed a gap in the bushes, the only way into the grove that did not involve jumping at least 100 feet into the air or the pain of several thorn scratches. Any ninja could have blown it to bits with ninjutsu or explosives, of course, but then the means by which the grove was well hidden and secure would be gone, the natural protection obliterated. This was not Haruka's goal, she had come here to use that protection. By slow recollection of memory, she felt for and eventually found the opening, and wormed her way through the ivy into the grove. It was pure and untouched by human hands, as virgin as she had left it long ago. The stream flowed down from the small, silent waterfall and moved cheerfully through the center of the small enclosure, disappearing through the thorny wall at the opposite end. Haruka's lips parted slightly in a thankful smile. She would be undisturbed here, in this peaceful place. Throwing aside her cares for the moment, she stripped off her clothing and waded gleefully into the chill waters of the stream, memories of her girlhood resurfacing in her mind. At the stream's deepest point, the water came up only to her waist, where it once came above her neck. Naked under the shade of the canopy, Haruka reveled in that old, sweet, innocent glory. Long had it been gone, and she would never have it again, but here, she was able to remember it and enjoy the memory without consequence. Shortly, though, the weight of her problems found their way into the grove after her, replacing itself squarely back upon her shoulders. She huddled in the shallow water on the bank of the stream, not against the chill of the water, but against the chill in her heart. The way those people, her kinsmen, had looked upon her that day tore at her, despite the fact that she had never known most of them before today. She had thought that she might find a family here, at least amongst the branch. As it turned out, those that she had most counted upon for welcome abhorred her in every sense of the word. And for the life of her, she had been unable to figure out why. She knew of the oppression that her fellow branch housers had faced, though she had never been a real part of it. She thought that the common suffering would have united all of those Hyuga bearing the caged bird seal. Haruka had been more wrong than she could have possibly imagined. Fortunately for her, Hiyashi, being an old friend from their childhood days, had kept them at bay, this time. But I cannot keep them from you forever, Hiyashi had said. I can be in only one place at any time. The branch family are numerous, and they are a bitter, spiteful lot. They obey me here, where I can command them, but cross paths with them on an empty back alley, and they will have no qualms against hurting you very badly. Oh, they will not kill you, he had said, noticing that her face had gone paler. Even they would not kill one of their own. But their resentment of you is very great, and they will stop at very little to gain what they believe to be retribution. Hiyashi-sama, Haruka had said, I have done nothing to harm them, I bear them no malice, no, not my kinsmen, no matter how distant. Yet they look at me with such scathing animosity. No human has ever looked at me so. Their faces are those of men and women who feel themselves betrayed, he had answered. Part of it is to do with the fact that you have lived outside the village for most of your life. You have been free of the suffering, the responsibilities that branch members in the village are forced to assume, while they have remained behind. To them, you are an outcast, a kin abandoner, Haruka finished. Her face was ashen with sorrow. The branch house considers those who flee the village to be outcasts, yes. But the name of kin abandoner they have given to only one person before you, Hiyashi said. His eyes had locked with hers then, the silver-white pupils commanding attention. That person was your father. To them, you are the remnant of his betrayal, a treachery so shameful and so wounding to them that forever after they have never spoken his true name, calling him kin abandoner, whenever they talked of him in public. Haruka did not need to ask. Hiyashi launched into the story without delay. It was 16 years ago now. You were about 14. I was about to be married. It was several weeks before the wedding ceremony would have happened that my sister was kidnapped. Gasping, Haruka had said, so that's what happened to. Yes. It was kept quiet at the time, of course. Our other enemies would have taken heart at our display of weakness, and our own clansmen's morale might have slipped.
Thus you were informed that she was taken ill, and the truth was not revealed until after you were gone. Now, she and her lover were being held at Sword Point by a terrorist organization, the Rotting Blood, whose leader you have recently destroyed, as I heard. The villains demanded no money for their ransom. Instead, they wanted the 2 assassins that had killed their former leader, your parents.
Comprehension had begun to dawn on Haruka's face. The realization was horrible, and Hiyashi did not need the Byakugan to detect her growing unease. You begin to understand. Your father had known that at first word of my sister's capture that this would be the result.
Before the ultimatum from the Rotting Blood was delivered, he took you and your mother and fled Konoha to live in the outer world. Things were unstable within the clan hierarchy at that time, a power shift was imminent, and outside forces were threatening the clan's way of life, and so they evaded the strictures that prevented most branch members from leaving. Thus, when the Rotting Blood's demand came, the Hyuga were not able to meet it.
Hiyashi paused for a moment, as if questioning the relevance of what he would say next. Then he said it. The older woman you met at the front gate, her sister and her sister's husband were disguised and sent in place of your parents. The present Haruka, sitting in the cold stream, remembered these words, and then remembered the woman's cold face. She shivered. The Rotting Blood managed to see through their disguises, and both they and my sister were murdered together. Then the murderers chained my sister's tortured lover to the 3 corpses, and released him to drag them back to Konoha. He arrived 7 days after your parents' doubles departed, bloody, beaten, the body of my sister in his arms, the failed doppelgangers dragging behind his feet. Thus it was revealed to all how your father's cowardice had rendered the sacrifices of the branch meaningless, and added the name of a Hyuga main family member to the obituary. I can see outrage in your eyes, Haruka. It is a just rage. You had nothing to do with the slaughter. But the branch refuses to see anything but your father's cowardice and treachery within you, and because they cannot revenge themselves upon him, they seek to punish you instead. I can constrain them within these walls, for now. But I am human. I must sleep, and there are those among the branch more than capable of taking you silently in the night. You will find no safe haven here, Haruka, however much I would like to offer you one. And so it was that Haruka had come here, to seclude herself from the cold, hateful eyes of her kindred, to bathe in the clear waters of this stream, cleansing away physical dirt, along with the sudden feeling of filth that her past had laid over her. Shaking in frustration as much as from the chill, she dunked herself deep, deep beneath the surface of the stream, hiding herself from her problems, her past, her people, and the world. In here, she was safe from all things human. Or so she thought, until the other person who remembered the grove found his way through the ivy portal. Ukeisuke wandered the forests outside of Konoha, seeking a place of solitude to clear his mind, focus his mental strength in preparation for his examination later that afternoon. His venture into the shinobi registrar had gone smoothly. He carried with him a temporary identification card and the scroll of official orders, to be given to his examiner. He was armed with kunai, shuriken, a number of explosive tags. His body was well fed and rested, energetic and tense in anticipation. A little too tense, in fact, such was his reason for coming out here. He remembered a time long past, just after he had left Konoha the first time, he had fled the Hyuga pursuers through these woods. He had defeated 3 of the 5 of them, an effort which used up most of his strength. He had retreated as fast as he knew how, eventually finding a small grove enclosed by trees that were saplings when he was a child, ringed with thorny bushes that looked quite intriguing. He had stumbled through the thin section of ivy by accident, but it was enough. Burying himself in the stream running through its middle, he had lost his Hyuga chasers. It was this same grove that he was looking for, and after much probing around, his extended chakra feelers found a section of ivy with no thorns behind them. He pushed this aside, clambering through the hole with some difficulty, and stood within his old safe haven once more. He could hear the birds singing, the water rushing, and was enthralled by its tranquility. Thinking himself alone, he withdrew the tendrils of his 64 ghostly arms back into their tenketsus for the first time in years. Now truly blind, Keisuke let the gentle forest ambiance wash over him, lulling him into calmness. Already feeling more at peace after the day's stress, and deriving a strange comfort from the blackness, he put all thoughts of the Hyuga, of demons, and the relationships of Konoha's youth out of his mind, and allowed the waters rushing to guide him to the stream to drink. And then, Keisuke realized that he dropped his guard too carelessly. His thirsty lips touched not the cool water they sought. They touched warm flesh. Before he had a chance to re-extend his arms and figure out who was beneath him, the owner of the flesh reacted. Violently. With a cry of rage that was unmistakably that of a powerful woman about to fend off a molester, she slammed her palm into his exposed gut before he could get his arms up to block it, and Keisuke felt a bolt of chakra pulse into his abdomen. This resulted in his guts vibrating and squirming very uncomfortably. However, this was a tickle compared to the forceful kick that landed squarely in his groin. As all men do when struck in this area, Keisuke doubled over in agony, moaning as only a man so wounded can, and fell hard to the forest floor. His attacker huffed furiously, speaking words layered with venom. To have witnessed me unclothed would have been forgivable, an accident. But purposefully defiling one of the Hyuga is. Why? Keisuke croaked in a broken voice, why would you do that to a blind man? Then and only then did Haruka look carefully at the one who lay at her feet. 20 minutes later, Keisuke was still on his back, nursing his injured pride and fighting not to retch at the unbelievable pain that still pulsed back and forth between his groin and his Juken-addled guts. Unable to stop himself from groaning, he had tried many times to rise, but had not been able to do so yet without becoming violently nauseous. For the last time, Keisuke, I apologize, said Haruka, having been forced to endure his complaining repeatedly since the incident. Gods curse you, Haruka, Keisuke groaned, having failed to rise for the umpteenth time. Read the rules before you play the game. Before you play Stomp the Pervert, you have to make sure that your victim is a legitimate target. Blind men don't fall into that category. Oh, shut up, Haruka snapped. I have told you already, I had a lot on my mind, and I was already in a sour mood. I didn't feel much like following the rules. Keisuke could not retort, as he was too busy trying to stop himself from throwing up. Haruka sighed. They rarely spoke to each other in such snarling tones, even when discussing the sensitive subject of the Hyuga clan, to which Haruka was, until this day, ignorant of if still loyal to, and which Keisuke loathed. Well, it serves him right, she thought. It was his own damned fault that he was careless enough to plant his face on. Haruka flushed with embarrassment and rage at the memory. Idiot. She fumed for a while as Keisuke struggled with the double pain of the Juken and his other injury. But when Keisuke finally managed to pull himself onto a rock in a sitting position, panting heavily, Haruka's anger began to recede. Well, I suppose I was careless, as well. Who knew that he'd been here before? And I was ducked under the water, moping around, oblivious to his presence. In a sense, it's as much my fault as it is his. Both of them sat on their separate rocks in silence for several minutes, each having completely forgotten the stresses of the emotional day which had sent them here. Both of them nursed their sundered pride. And in Keisuke's case, a splitting headache, all thoughts of the complications of their lives blown away in the uniquely painful moment. Neither of them had imagined that this was how their first meeting would be following their separation before returning to Konoha. Finally, simultaneously, each one remembered their reason for being here. Keisuke, Haruka said, you have said that you despise the Hyuga. With a few notable exceptions, yes. I do. Keisuke responded. His pain had finally been reduced to a dull ache. He would be uncomfortable for a few hours, but he would be able to face his test. Haruka's face was grim, a reflection of her new and bitter regard for herself. I believe that I finally understand why. Keisuke's eyebrows arched. Here was something that he had never expected in his life to hear. Haruka continued, not bothering to look up into his face. I possessed the Byakugan before. But now I know that the Hyuga's Dujutsu is not all-seeing. In my life away from the village, I was ignorant. I have been blind to the suffering, the sacrifices of my kinsmen. Sacrifices made in vain, thanks to the cowardice of my own flesh and blood, she thought. Her feeling of self-loathing and filthiness came back to her on black wings, circling her head. But worse, she went on, I thought before that I did not return to the village because I felt that my exile was my true home. When I saw my clansmen's faces, the anguish upon them, I felt their pain in my own heart. I grieved for their suffering, though I showed it not. She breathed in deeply, her breath almost rattling in her chest as she shook with imagined cold. And then I knew, as assuredly as I know night from day, the true reason I waited so long to return. Fear. A tear fell from her silver eyes, then was followed by more. Her head hung low in deepest shame. I feared coming back to my home because, though I chose to ignore it, I knew my clansmen were in pain. I had feared to see their anguish, and to have revenge taken upon me for not sharing in their pain. I am a coward, Keisuke. A coward and a fool. And there Haruka stopped, waiting for Keisuke to reprimand her, agree with her. Indeed, you are a coward, he would say. He would laugh. He would gloat as he always did, exulting in his superiority. But the laughter and exultation never came. Instead, she felt a gentle rapping on the back of her skull. Turning, she saw the blind man standing there, his armored fist being what had tapped her.
Behind you, idiot, he said gently, you are no coward. A fool, yes you are. And you're an inferior fighter, a nuisance that I can't get rid of. But you aren't without courage. How else would you have survived practice with me almost every day for the last 18 months? If you are a coward, why the hell are you here facing the clansmen you feared now? Open your eyes, Haruka. You're a fool, but you've had brains enough to recognize your mistake, even if it took you half of your life.
He spoke the same words that he always spoke in their rivalry, insulting her, degrading her wherever he could. But his voice was haggard, his expression pleading. He hated seeing his partner like this. He was used to the stronger Haruka, the one who joined him in their playful rivalry, yet who became a serious, dependable, and deadly fighter when the situation called for it. Keisuke was not happy with this weakened, guilt-wasted Haruka, and it showed. Keisuke's silent plea reached her. It sang to Haruka's stronger half, rallied it, and drew it to the surface. Drying her face, she stood up. Keisuke smiled, and moved towards her. He saw an opportunity to gain another ally. Readying his proposal, he opened his mouth. And the words died in his throat as Haruka suddenly spun to face him, her low kick sweeping his legs out from under him. He fell flat on his back, the wind leaving his body in a rush at the impact with the ground. Stunned, he was unable to prevent Haruka's foot from planting itself on his sternum. Who's the inferior fighter? Keisuke. Damn it, woman. The blind man growled. His earlier hurts had sapped him of strength that he had not yet fully recovered. He could not remove his partner's foot from his chest. Let me up, I've still got a test to take. Haruka's face was set in grim determination, on one condition, partner. Keisuke was in a hurry. Name it, help me change the Hyuga. Hinata walked silently next to her secret love, who was lugging along a great deal more ninja tools in his pack than was probably necessary. Perhaps excitement to be training again had caused him to overdo it when he was preparing, as it had occasionally when he was younger. Hinata found this particular behavior amusing, entertaining, but nerves prevented her from laughing. She was burning with anticipation. Now, after 3 long years, she finally had her chance. If she could amaze the young blonde ninja with her hard-earned skill, she would be granted the opportunity to win favor with him. From there, she might convince him to come to more practices with her, which would lead, possibly, to more private sessions without Shino or Kiba. She would be able to tell him, in private, where all her new strength had come from. The ninja way, that she had learned from him. After that point, having secured his attention, she might have developed the courage, maybe, to ask him out for an evening. Her blissful thoughts were interrupted. It seemed that Hinata was never allowed to daydream for very long, these days. Naruto had been hailed by his old Junin sensei, Hitaki Kakashi. "Hey, Hinata," he said, "can you wait here a moment? I won't take long. Kakashi-sensei just wants a quick, private word, that's all." "Ah. Of course, Naruto-kun. Great. I'll be back sooner than you can say, Byakugan." He dashed away to join his teacher. Now, Hinata wasn't normally the type to invade people's privacy, but when it came to Naruto, she had a worrisome curiosity that had been with her since her first memories of him, which she had never quite been able to rid herself of. This worrisome curiosity got the better of her at this moment. She could not hear what they said to each other, but her time with Neji had been very useful to her in more ways than one. Under his tutelage, she had become an adept lip reader. Kakashi's lips were covered by his mask, of course, but this presented little challenge to the heiress of Hyuga, who had all but X-ray vision. Murmuring, "Byakugan," softly, she looked through the mask and heard, or saw, rather, their conversation. "Hey, Kakashi-sensei," she saw Naruto say, "can you make this quick? I kinda had plans to go practice with Hinata's team. I don't want to be late." Kakashi replied, "I will be quick, Naruto, if you pay attention and I don't have to repeat myself. Listen carefully. What I'm about to say may shock you." "Ah, I've been all over the world, sensei. There isn't much left that can shock me." Hinata watched Kakashi sigh impatiently, leaning more heavily on his crutches. "Naruto, listen. You don't need to be concerned with looking for Sasuke anymore." "What, you mean you found him?" Hinata didn't need to read his lips to hear that one. The shout drew the stares of all the people in the general vicinity. "Be quiet, Naruto," Kakashi warned, waving off the onlookers casually. "This is secret information for a reason. If the ordinary villagers found out, there would be a panic." "All right, Kakashi-sensei, I promise I won't tell anyone," said Naruto, quickly controlling himself. Apparently, Uchiha Sasuke was still quite a delicate subject with the blonde, enough so that it could drive him to revert to the wild, barely controllable state of mind he'd been in when he had left.
"So, where is he, sensei?" Kakashi looked carefully over his shoulder, making sure nobody was listening. "He's here, Naruto. Sasuke is hiding in Konoha, hiding under our very noses. What he wants, we can only guess."
Naruto fought to keep himself from blowing up. This information wasn't just a shock, as Kakashi had told him it would be. It was the crack of a lightning blast aimed straight into a tree that had been soaked in oil. The tree was Naruto's strong, tall, solid spirit. The flammable oil was Sasuke's betrayal, the broken promise to Sakura to bring him back, the Kyuubi fox spirit who taunted him in his dreams, pointing out that he was too weak to redeem himself, much less his friend. In short, it was all things that brought Naruto pain. Kakashi's words ignited it, setting both it and the tree of his spirits aflame. The great branches crackled with hopeful flame. It hurt a little to think about it all again, but the pain lost out to the other thing the flames brought with them. There was hope, now. Even though he might perish in the effort, Naruto intended to act upon this chance to burn away the pain forever. "Naruto," Kakashi said, "it's difficult, I know, but you have to keep this quiet, you have to control yourself. We know only that Sasuke is in Konoha and is responsible for your doppelganger's attack. And even this information was hard to come by. Those copies that were made of you have strong will, apparently. We don't know his exact hiding location, what he wants, or if he is even acting of his own free will. There is no way to know if his intentions are hostile or, if they are, just how much threat he poses after 3 years. We can't afford to act too hastily." He heard his sensei's words and obeyed them, but Naruto couldn't stop himself from shaking with excitement and determination. He swallowed hard, forcing down the voice which longed to cry out to his lost friend. Kakashi was right, of course. The villagers had not forgotten how the last son of their most cherished shinobi clan had turned to the blackest of all hearts to grant him power. To run around shouting that he was back would incite bedlam. Naruto started, pausing to get his cracking voice under his thumb again. "Have they checked the Uchiha compound?" Kakashi breathed again, relieved that his former student had been able to restrain himself. "Several Anbu are there already," he said, "but they haven't reported any sightings. If Sasuke's base is there, then it is very well hidden." Naruto's face fell. He'd been hoping that someone would at least find a lead there. He was about to probe Kakashi further when his old teacher spoke again. Naruto, he said, we cannot be certain, but there is a possibility that you and Sakura, not to mention myself, could be in great danger. Out of fear of this danger, and the danger posed by the increase in Akatsuki activity, Tsunade-sama cannot send you on any missions outside of the village, and she's even had a team of Anbu assigned to watch you from the shadows. She's doing everything she can to fortify the village and you against the coming onslaught. But if I know you, Naruto, then you're not going to sit around waiting for trouble to come to you. So I'm giving you an unofficial mission, Naruto. Naruto ed his ear, interested in what his master had in mind. He waited while Kakashi checked over his shoulder again before continuing. Go about your business as usual, Naruto. Practice your heart out, eat ramen, make small talk with your friends, and have a little fun. Put on a show for the villagers to cover up your less-known activities, sticking your nose everywhere that smells fishy, observing suspicious activity, reading through newspapers and listening to whatever conversations you have to find whatever hints you can. Sasuke is planning something. Whatever information we can get will help us. I'll be checking up on you every now and then, to see if you found anything. Naruto nodded. This was something he was easily capable of. Whatever Sasuke was doing, he'd sniff it out. Okay, Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi nodded in return, and turned to hobble off. Over his shoulder, he added, if you find him, Naruto, don't try to take him yourself. Come to me first. We, you, Sakura, and I, should do this together. With that, he left, his crutches helping him slowly along to where shelter and rest awaited him. Naruto went back to where he'd left Hinata. Almost immediately, he could tell that something was wrong. Something in her lavender-tinted eyes was uncertain, fearful. She held herself like someone who had just witnessed the execution of a precious friend or family member. Hinata, he asked, his voice layered with concern, what's wrong? Hinata's eyes grew more fearful for a moment, but then she shook her head. No, she said, it's nothing. Naruto-kun, we should move on. My team is waiting for us in the forest. Naruto didn't buy it. Something was up, that he knew for certain. He'd seen it in her eyes. It probably wasn't any of his business, something that had to do with her family, perhaps, or an appointment of some sort that she just remembered and realized she'd missed. Yet he considered Hinata one of his better friends. He'd have to ask her about it again later. For now, though, he shoved it to the back of his brain. There was training to be done. He gestured to the short blue-haired girl. Lead the way, Hinata. Keisuke parted from Haruka at the village gates in a very good mood. Sakura had been right. Haruka was willing to help him, had even asked him to help her do it. She just had to find some safe lodging away from the Hyuga compound, and she would be set to help bring the Byakugan's barbaric protection system down around the Hyuga's ears. Things were looking up and, except for a sore groin and some slightly unsettled guts, Keisuke felt more than ready to face his next challenge. Smiling and walking with a spring in his step despite his fading pain, he hastened to Training Area 17 with triumph in his mind's eye. As it turned out, Training Area 17 was a rectangular enclosure about 6 miles in length and 4 miles wide. At one end was a rocky cliff face that stretched easily 700 feet high. At the other end was a tall gate, the only way in or out of the enclosure other than through the air. Within the enclosure was a swamp, complete with mossy trees that had vines drooping from them, murky water that was waist deep at its shallowest and well over a man's head at its deepest, and a spooky darkness that even Keisuke, in his blindness, could perceive. And standing before the gate. Hyuga Neji, said the young man, holding out his hand. We've met before. Yes, at the homecoming, Keisuke responded, taking it. Both men regarded each other for a moment, respectful appreciation on their faces. Then they got down to business. Keisuke presented his scroll of orders from the Hokage, which Neji skimmed quickly through, then tucked away. I'll be your examiner while you take this test, a Junin equivalence test, within the walls Training Area 17, Neji said. It is a fast test with simple goals. You will enter the swamp, where you must locate a civilian target. In this case, it is a ninja masquerading as a commoner for the purpose of the exercise, and to escort him safely back to this gate. Keisuke nodded, showing that he understood. Neji was right. In this small enclosure, finding the target shouldn't take a long time, so it was certain to end quickly. Naturally, this is not just a case of some old lady who's lost her way. It is a high-priority target wanted by an enemy village, who has hired its own ninjas, also played by our helpful comrades, of course, to find him and kill him on sight. Their encampment is at the other end of the swamp. Your first objective, therefore, is to find the target before they do. I would expect as much, Keisuke thought. So what's the trick? Once you have found him, you will need to lead him back through the swamp, which is full of natural dangers as much as it is full of enemies, back here. Though in reality he is a fully trained shinobi, he will use no ninjutsu here. He is playing the part of an ordinary person, and will rely completely upon you for guidance and protection against all hazards. Your enemies, as well as your environment, will strike to kill. If at any time you fail to stop a death blow and our shinobi actor has to break character to save himself, you will fail your exam on the spot. He makes it sound more like a performance than a test of skill, Keisuke mused. Damned Hyuga, so concerned over perfection. Everything has to look good to them. He thought it jokingly, of course. He knew from Naruto that this young man was worth respecting since he had beaten some sense into him, and Keisuke was personally beginning to like him. He possessed a certain elegance that, when not coupled with the arrogance and intolerance that cursed many of his fellows, made him quite charming. Also, Neji continued, the target will begin this exercise in perfect health. You will begin with 100 points. When you have returned to the starting point, the target's health will be assessed. At that time, points will be deducted from your score for injuries, illness, infection, etc. You will also lose points for time spent in the swamp after 1 hour. Every 10 minutes after that will deduct 1 point from your score.
There is one way to add to your score. Steal from the enemy encampment their map of the swamp, which not only marks routes of safer passage through the wetlands, but also notes the location of secret caches of supplies and contraband kept hidden there by the enemy village. Return this map to me at the end of the examination, and I will add 10 points to your score.
Keisuke read in Neji's aura that he was reaching the end of his explanation. He tensed in anticipation, preparing for the imminent trial. If, when all calculations and changes are applied, your score exceeds 60 points, then you will pass the test and register as a Junin-level shinobi of the village hidden in the leaves. Are your instructions clear? They are, Examiner, Keisuke said. Neji grinned. From a person who spent 2 years with the most surprising ninja in our village, I expect great things, Keisuke-san. Good luck. At Neji's signal, the gate opened. Keisuke rushed forward, and the test began. Inuzuka Kiba sat grumbling beneath a tree with his teammate, observing the mock battle taking place. Normally, old Team 8's practice was about more than single combat. This time, however, they were hosting a friend that they hadn't seen for a long time. Naruto wanted to do one-on-one matches to see how everyone had progressed in comparison to each other, and Kiba, along with his comrades, had sportingly agreed. Naruto had looked to Kiba then, knowing that the wild man would be itching to try to beat the technique that had so easily stopped him earlier. Kiba had wanted to fight Naruto and his Tales of Light, and still planned to, but at the moment he had no idea how he was supposed to fight it, and while Naruto might be willing to charge headlong at any foe regardless of power differences, Kiba chose his battles according to the law of beasts. You just don't fight something that you can't even touch until either your opponent became vulnerable or you have acquired the means to touch it. Therefore, he had grumbled a reluctant excuse and withdrawn to the shade of the tree, hoping that by watching Naruto's fight he would learn how to get around those 9 extra limbs. Without Kiba to fight, Naruto's gaze had turned to Hinata. He expressed particular interest in seeing how far Kiba's shy teammate had come. The shy one in question had promptly turned an interesting color and started mumbling something too quiet to be audible. That fight would have been awkward, Kiba thought, somewhat amused at the prospect. It would have given him something to tease Hinata about later, anyway. In the end, it had been Shino to come to the rescue. Though Naruto expressed slight disappointment at being stuck fighting his least favorite member of Team 8, he agreed. Nobody else seemed quite ready to go at the moment. Naruto had little time to remain disappointed, however. The battle quickly became very, very interesting, and Kiba found himself watching it very attentively. Naruto started off in predictable fashion, nothing they hadn't seen before. He charged the bug user directly from the front, fist at the ready. Shino moved to meet him, the destruction bugs that called him master and home swarming around them both. The bugs bit and tore at the blonde wherever they could gain a hold. Naruto seemed to be relying on nothing more than his own speed to fend them off, and it didn't seem to be all that effective. This was Shino's bread and butter. Distract the opponent with basic taijutsu as the bugs slowly eat away at their bodies and their chakra, wearing them down. Kiba knew that Naruto wouldn't stand long for this. Sure enough, after a few exchanges, the blonde genin brought forth his tails of light to try to sweep the bugs away. At first glance, this seemed to work better than plain taijutsu and speed. Most of the destruction bugs were blown away from his main body. But after only a short time, it began to fail, and Kiba saw that the technique had a weakness against this opponent. Shino's bugs fed upon chakra. Normally, the best place for them to get it was from Shino, their master, in return for their unquestioning service. But here, Naruto's external chakra coils gave them a new, rich source of raw chakra to harvest, and they did so eagerly. With their chakra being consumed, the tails of light lost their force, and Shino called forth additional bugs from his body to replace the ones that were busy with their meal. Once again, Naruto fell prey to their onslaught, and Shino began to get the upper hand. Kiba watched all this with disappointment. He had found the weakness of Naruto's new power, sure. But unless he could teach Akamaru to eat chakra rather than meat and table scraps, it didn't help him out any. It looked as though he'd be going back to the drawing board. Losing interest in the fight, for the moment, he glanced over at Hinata. The girl was watching the fight, but it looked as though she was having difficulty deciding which combatant to support. As Kiba kept looking, it seemed to him that she gave up on openly supporting either one of them and chose to watch in silence, as he did. At any rate, she appeared to have less trouble with distraction than Kiba did. Her eyes remained glued to the pair, well, to one of the two, anyway, thought Kiba, in mute appraisal. Finally, Naruto's growl of frustration made Kiba turn his head. He seemed about to change his tactics again. What will you do now, Naruto? Geez. You're as annoying on the battlefield as you are around the village, Naruto said. Then a grin spread to his face. The one that showed Kiba that things might be about to get interesting again. But I'll get around those defenses of yours, continued the blonde, you'll see. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The swamp proved to be a challenge to navigate, despite Keisuke's generally good pathfinding capabilities. Though he could avoid trudging through the muddy water by hopping swiftly through the gnarled trees, the numerous drooping vines and spindly branches impeded his ghostly arm's reach, making it hard to see ahead of him. Already, he had smacked himself into a few branches, and he was beginning to think that maybe the water might have been more comfortable. Not his ideal environment. But then, when was a Junin ever allowed to decide where his target got lost? Eventually, he had the sense to create a few Kage Bunshins to scout the path ahead of him, and he created extras to search off to his sides while he was at it. He had not yet encountered any enemies, but this didn't surprise him. They were after the target, not him. Most likely they would only attack him once he got in their way. All in all, it was a rocky road so far, but nothing had really blocked it, although, once I find the objective, that ought to change quite quickly. 10 minutes into the search, one of his clones located the enemy encampment. Keisuke made a mental note of where it was. If he had time after finding the target, he would come back for the map, but he could not afford hesitation now. There were only 2 guards within the camp, which meant that the rest had to be out in the swamp, searching for their objective. The location fixed firmly in his thoughts, Keisuke continued forth. 5 more minutes passed, and then he heard a cry of panic off his right flank. He turned quickly, and a split second later, his forward Bunshins called to him, having found what they were looking for. Grinning at his first small victory, Keisuke hastened to the target, coming with feeler range in seconds. Quickly, he searched around for what had made the target cry out, but he could locate no enemies. Wondering what could be the problem, Keisuke turned to face the target.
Sir, are you Al? Oh, thank goodness you've arrived, said the target, interrupting him. The voice was deep and loud and obviously belonged to a male, but Keisuke noted that its owner was putting in a great deal of obvious effort to make it sound helpless. The overall effect it had on Keisuke was to give him the impression that his mock target was a hopelessly poor actor who was doing his best to convince the blind man that he was not.
Ahem. What seems to be the true? You've got to help me, the target cried, interrupting him again. I've been trying to escape from these terrible, evil shinobi. Tell me something I don't already know, thought Keisuke. Already he disliked this man. And I thought I'd gotten away clean, but then the most horrible thing happened. The man's voice was much too loud. Keisuke worried that if he was allowed to keep speaking, the enemy would find them much more quickly than he would like. Get to the point already, Keisuke thought. His words were more polite. And what is the problem now, sir? It's awful. I've been caught in quicksand. A moment passed in which Keisuke wondered just what kind of idiot they'd given him for his test objective. Not only was the man an abysmal actor, but he could not seem to comprehend that lowering his voice would be beneficial to his survival and, on top of that, he was now planted in mud that was perhaps only a foot deep by measure of Keisuke's feelers, and he was calling it quicksand. While calmly, if loudly, talking about how awful and terrible it was. Is he this bad all the time, or is he purposefully doing this to get on my nerves and make things difficult? Deciding to act upon the former assumption, he didn't even want to think that someone so utterly intolerable could exist. He sighed and grabbed the man by his waist, pulling him from the mud easily. "Oh, thank you," cried the target with over-exaggerated gratitude. "I thought I would have been sucked under for sure. I, Maeda Guy, am eternally in your debt." Keisuke could only stand before this man and gape in awe at his inhumanly bad acting. This will be one hell of an examination. The forest seemed much more crowded suddenly as Naruto's bunshins exploded into being around him. The blonde looked on his bug user opponent confidently. Let Shino have his army of bugs. He commanded his own battalion. That annoying hooded freak might have been able to neutralize one of him, but could he deal with 20 at the same time? Naruto thought not, and renewed his attack with a great cry of challenge. All 19 bunshins and the true Naruto raged towards their target, intent on bodily thrashing him. Shino, not having been made a chunin for no reason, was prepared. Offering up his chakra to his bugs, he rose his arms and gave his orders. Destruction bugs swarmed from his sleeves. Mushi Cave no Jutsu. Bug wall technique. The bugs swarmed protectively around Shino at hurricane wind speed. Naruto had seen this technique in action before, and it had proven quite effective, on the small bees that had later been able to suicide bomb it to oblivion. 20 future Hokages, Naruto assessed, should not be stopped or even deflected easily by a jutsu that could only butcher other insects, and then only so long as those insects didn't carry explosives. This was a miscalculation on Naruto's part. Shino's bugs had become better as he had become better at controlling them, and they raged like a twister, repelling some of the clones and tearing others apart, dispersing them. The end result was an untouched Shino, 6 defeated clones, 13 clones still usable, and 1 surprised real Naruto, who retreated into a bush to hide. He's just as annoying as before, he thought, but he's definitely a better fighter than I remember. Then again, I never really fought against him before. Damn it, I underestimated him. He couldn't think much more, as he had to dodge the explosion from the tag that had arrived at his bush via Kanai Airlines. Sailing out of the bush and landing hard on his feet, Naruto attempted to mingle with his bunshins, but found himself assailed by shuriken and insects directly. What the hell? He said, narrowly outmaneuvering the onslaught. He evaded the long-range attacks and got within melee range again, but the bugs and weapons ignored his clones and dogged his every step. He kept trying to swat the bugs away with his tails of light, and the bugs kept eating the chakra right away from them. Naruto attempted to stab Shino in the arm, but the bug user's taijutsu had also improved, and their weapons clashed with flying sparks. Shino regarded Naruto impassively from underneath his hood, in that way that ticked Naruto off to no end. I anticipated your use of Kage Bunshin, he explained coolly, and planted a female bug on the real you at the beginning of the match. Everywhere your true body goes is known to me, and as you can see, I am more than capable of repelling a full Bunshin taijutsu assault. Teme, Naruto growled to himself. He began to see that he was losing this fight, not because Shino was too powerful, but because his techniques were not suited to fight these destruction bugs. He could not hide from them, nor could he use his tails to fight them without wasting huge amounts of chakra. Of course, Naruto could always call upon the enormous reserves of chakra provided by his demon tenant, but he wanted to avoid that if possible. Using it made him feel as though his own power was insufficient, and Kyuubi seemed to like reminding him of that. So how could he? Then the idea came to him. He turned it over in his head for a split second, then motioned to 2 of his bunshins. Not enough to prompt another bug wall, but enough to serve his purposes, and renewed his attack. This was a long shot, that was for certain. If it worked, it might just assure his victory. If not, then he was back at square one. Silently, He used two of his free ghostly arms to communicate the plan via synchronization to his buncheons. After a few more exchanges, one of the clones managed to grab a hold of Shino's left arm. Seeing his chance, the second one grabbed his right. Naruto grit his teeth. It was now or never. They wouldn't be able to hold him long. He gave the silent signal. At once, both clones pumped an enormous amount of energy into their tails of light, and the clones that were standing watch did the same for good measure. Whether Shino was afraid of the sudden blinding glow that was generated and was desperately trying to suppress it, or the bugs left his control in favor of devouring the generous meal, Naruto didn't know. But all of the bugs that he could see stopped attacking Naruto and the buncheons and focused on the bright tails. The bluff had worked. Shino managed to break free of the clone's grip, but it was now too late. Naruto had reached the nearby stream and finished his hand seals already. Suiden, Suiryuden, Water Style, Water Dragon Blast. The giant dragon formed of water surged forth, arcing high into the air and roaring at the prospect of fresh prey. Its way blocked by the two Naruto clones that were still attacking him, the target had no chance of escaping. With a heavy splash, he fell to the dragon's maw. When the water had settled to a large puddle, however, there was nothing there but a mass of bugs, scrambling to shake the water from their wings and get airborne again. Shino had replaced himself with a bug clone at the last moment. Naruto there bewildered, staring into the trees for some sign of the real Shino. He reappeared rather quickly, leaping from a nearby bush and attacking with his destruction bugs from behind. Even Shino's stealth, apparently, had gotten better. Beneath the onslaught of bugs, the blonde genin thrashed, writhed, screamed. Shino-kun! Shino! The bug user's teammates cried out, pleading with him to stop. He was letting his insects work too long upon his victim. Serious pain was being inflicted. Shino had let them carry on, thinking that perhaps it might be a buncheon. His female tracking bug had left its perch to eat the plentiful chakra that the blonde had so generously provided at what was surely some cost to himself. Greater geniuses than he had left themselves exposed to Naruto when they thought they had won, only to be shown a new definition of humility for their mercy. Yet the damage the bugs had inflicted was near the limit of what a human being could survive, and the body had not disappeared into smoke. Surely this had to be the real thing. Satisfied, Shino called off the attack, his bugs returning eagerly to their master to nurse the wounds inflicted by Naruto's swatting tails. Shino himself hurried forward, intending to help Naruto up. "I'm sorry, Naruto. I thought you might be." He stopped. Something beneath his feet, an elegant seal, by the looks of it, had begun to shine blue-white. Before he could move away or even send his bugs back into the air, it triggered, and the snap of cold air solidified the water around his feet, locking him into place. In front of him, the body of Naruto puffed out of existence. "A buncheon?" The voice came from all directions, finishing Shino's sentence for him. Looking up, Shino could see 10 more Narutos waiting in the trees, speaking as one. His bugs swarmed once more from his sleeves, some of them coming up to guard him, preparing for a bug wall, another sub-swarm attacking the ice that bound him. The latter group made slow progress. It would take a few seconds for them to weaken it enough so that Shino could break free. The true Naruto, hidden in the trees among his clones, needed less time than that. A few quick hand seals to alter the nature of his chakra, and he was set. Ryude Ninpo. Reitsuchi Degeki, Ghostly Arm Secret Art, Lightning Earth Strike. Naruto brought one of his ghostly arms, one that he had not been using for his Tamashibi no Kyubi technique, into contact with Shino's chest, and forced the altered chakra through it with the speed of a bolt of lightning. It looked similar to a bolt of lightning, as well, but this lightning was not electric. It was a wave of chakra that had the physical properties of earth and soil and crushed rock. Forcing such a large amount of chakra through the thin strand of his arm all at once and at that speed wasn't easy on the arm. In fact, it completely disintegrated it. Yet the attack did what it was supposed to do. Shino was knocked free of the bug-weakened ice shackles, flying into the brush. Very little surprised Aburame Shino. But seeing the Naruto battalion descending from the trees and charging him with all tails blazing was not how he had expected to end the battle. The clones knocked aside his bugs, which were still valiantly trying to block their way. Then, 10 feet away, they parted to reveal the real Naruto, rushing at him with his Rasengan in his hand. There was no way that Shino could disentangle himself in time. He had lost. As the swirling ball of raw chakra stopped inches from his face and dissipated, Shino's thought was, apparently, near to the limit that a human being can survive is not sufficient to defeat Uzumaki Naruto. He allowed the blonde to help him out of the brush and called back his bugs. The stronger shinobi had won this day. Now taking his seat to watch the practice match between Kiba and Hinata, he wondered whether or not the strongest heart would prevail today as well. Umeda Guy was extremely pleased with himself. When he had been told that Neji had needed a capable Chunin to play the part of a helpless civilian and be ready to defend oneself against the Chunin attackers should the examinee fail, he had volunteered out of affection for his former pupil. For surely, he thought, my wonderful ex-student must have only the best to be truly effective. Nobody else can so dynamically play the part of a defenseless person and be on guard against Lee and Tenten at the same time. For once, Neji had had to agree that his old sensei's dynamic acting skills were very well suited to the job. His tendency to be loudmouthed would give his location away to Tenten and Lee, whom Neji had drafted to be among the enemies, and his tendency to give too much effort to his task would see him falling into numerous traps, both real and imagined, thus slowing the examinee down considerably. But Guy, of course, would have refused to hear this logic if it had been shouted into his ear, so he went on happily believing that he had been chosen because he was dynamically and youthfully cool, most assuredly the ideal candidate, my student loves me, etc., ad nauseum. Thus far, he had been stuck in quicksand, half dragged and half carried across what his inner civilian was certain was tar. Keisuke had given up trying to explain that it was merely very dark mud after 5 wasted minutes. Attacked by his own students whom he had to be violently restrained from running up to and begging for mercy in his desire to dynamically fill his role. Rescued from a shuriken-flinging trap mechanism, actually real. Dropped from Keisuke's arms when an enemy kunai hit the blind man in the shoulder into a deep pool where he had dynamically pretended not to be able to swim. Gotten himself wrapped up in bandages while he was trying to patch up Keisuke's shoulder and dynamically acting as though he were very bad at it, nearly swallowed by a crocodile while waiting for Keisuke to return from the enemy camp with the map, and very nearly beaten up by the frustrated examinee when he'd been caught, in dynamically feigned stupidity, trying to clean an alligator tooth wound using the map as a washcloth. Now, Keisuke was leading him along a shallow, supposedly safe route through the swamp back to the gate, bound up in metal wire, to keep you from misplacing your hands, as the examinee had told him. They had just left behind the unconscious Rock Lee, whom Guy had wept over loudly, praising the bravery and skill of the enemy until Keisuke had pulled him off with him. They were very near the blind man's goal. Within moments, the gate was in sight. At last, breathed Keisuke raggedly, feeling the metal of the latch mechanism with his arms. He started walking forward at an increased pace, eager to be finished with the long and exhausting day. However, 5 feet from the gate, he felt a newcomer enter their midst, and before he could react, he was under attack. Hake Kusho. 8 Trigams Wind Palm. Keisuke felt a gust of chakra blow him off of his feet. The feeling was familiar, as was the name of the technique. Like being blown back by Haruka's Kaden, only it's a direct shot, and an offensive technique rather than an area effect, defensive one. With Keisuke out of the way, the attacker sped straight at Guy. "Ah, my former student," he said praisingly, "how wonderfully you've developed." If anyone present found it out of character to be saying this as the student was aiming a killing blow at his heart not 12 feet away, they gave no indication. Neji's advance was put off momentarily by a flight of shuriken that whizzed through the air where he would have been a split second later had he kept going. He leapt back a short distance, waiting to see if any more were on their way. There weren't, but Keisuke only needed those that he'd already thrown. Hitoshirezu Shinto no Jutsu. The trunk of the tree where the shuriken had embedded themselves was ripped to shreds as the chakra stored within them detonated. The tree, which was rather large considering that few trees seemed to live very long in this swamp, fell into what had been Neji's path. Byakugan. Neji looked straight through the tree, saw that neither Guy nor Keisuke was behind it. A few moments later, he located them in another tree, where Keisuke was securing Guy to the trunk and a branch with wire. He took his time waiting. He rather wanted to fight Keisuke without his busybody former teacher in the way, and Keisuke took his time at his own risk, for every moment detracted from his score. When Keisuke came down from the tree 20 seconds later, he grinned in anticipation. His Byakugan saw the blind man in his entirety, The lengthy ghostly arms, all 64 of them, waving everywhere, serving him for eyes. The healthy amount of chakra that pulsed through his inner coils, and the smooth and elaborate way in which the system was all connected at the Tenketsus, allowing chakra to flow freely between the inner and outer systems. The Rokujuyan Ryude technique was truly a marvel when seen through the eyes of a Hyuga. Now, we will see if this technique of yours is truly the terror that Hiyashi-sama is so concerned about, he said. He saw Keisuke smile and his eyebrows perk up in an amused expression. Interesting, Neji thought, how just his brows can be expressive enough without the eyes below them. So Hiyashi's told you about his fears, Interesting, him confiding so in a branch member, Keisuke replied. I'm his nephew, said Neji. Hiyashi-sama isn't all bad. Recently, he's even softened up a little. He is simply slow to warm up to change. Keisuke seemed to ponder this a little, as though he were surprised to hear it. Softened up, huh? He murmured. Well, I suppose that only makes my dream easier to realize. Neji's own eyebrows arched. Your dream, Keisuke-san? Keisuke's smile returned. I will tell you, he said, after I have won through that gate and taken a rank equal to yours, Neji-san. That rare smile found its way to Neji's lips. He was very much going to enjoy testing this man who called Uzumaki Naruto his little brother. Come. With his Byakugan, it was easy for Neji to see the 16 ghostly arms snake themselves around their master, but he could not guess the nature of the seal that was being carved. It was a mysterious-looking seal, alien to the Hyuga Junin, written in an archaic language that he had never seen before. When finished, it gave off a faint yellow-white luminescence, but no other change was apparent, even to his superior eyes. The rest of the arms continued to sweep the area around Keisuke, keeping tabs on the surroundings and on Neji. Neji watched him, sitting relaxed in his Juken stance, waiting for the enemy attack. Time was on his side. Keisuke's score would slowly degrade if he remained where he was. He would have to attack at some point, and there was no way that Neji would be surprised. Keisuke seemed to know where he stood in all this, playing defense, as I expected. I can't say I blame you. It's much to your advantage in this scenario. Well, then, he said, drawing a pair of kunai, I'll be taking the initiative. He charged. Neji immediately went to work with his Hake Kusho, attempting to blast Keisuke off course, unbalance him so that Neji could make an uncountered offensive. Keisuke apparently was no slouch, though, and he moved with subtle swiftness, dodging no more and wasting no more energy than he needed to. Within moments, he had reached the Hyuga Junin. Wielding his two kunai with surprising proficiency, the blind one hacked at Neji, forcing him to take up his own kunai in defense. Neji recognized this strategy, by forcing him to use a weapon in response to parry the sharp blades that were so skillfully wielded. Keisuke was effectively occupying his hands so that he could not use his Juken without leaving himself open in some way. A number of Neji's opponents had utilized this tactic. Most of them had fallen anyway. Neji leapt across the water and onto the tree that had fallen, and Keisuke followed. The Hyuga Junin, temporarily out of range of the ghostly arm's perception, took his opportunity to concentrate a large amount of his chakra within his left hand. When Keisuke landed upon the log, swinging his blades, Neji parried the nearest with the kunai in his right hand, then swung his enhanced Juken at Keisuke's side. At the last moment, Keisuke's feelers finally caught on, and he moved desperately to evade. The result was a glancing blow. Keisuke grimaced, knowing that it would hurt quite a bit once his nerves registered the damage. Neji suffered more immediate consequences. The seal shining upon Keisuke's skin crackled, the friction caused by Neji's chakra prompting its angry response. The Hyuga jolted backward as electricity sparked into his body. Keisuke took advantage of his openness, planting a kick in his chest. Neji, though hurting, was able to use the momentum of the kick to sail onto a nearby tree branch. He rubbed his hand where the electricity had entered his palm. That isn't the best of feelings, he thought. He knew, now, the purpose of that seal. You must have figured it out now, huh? Keisuke said, my lightning seal isn't normally my preferred technique. It can be more dangerous than the fire or frost seals, it's true. But just as one never knows where a true bolt of lightning will strike, so it is impossible to guess when and where the lightning from my seal will lash out. It's unpredictable, uncontrollable, and therefore unreliable. Neji called back, but against me, and all Hyuga,
It's the best one, isn't it? The Juken, the raw chakra that is delivered by our unique taijutsu, causes friction on the seal, triggering the lightning. Every Juken hit will return damage to the Hyuga that used it. It is an eye for an eye technique.
Very astute, Neji-san, said Keisuke. Naruto was right when he told me you were a genius. Although, he thought, there are ways to manipulate how much lightning is generated. The more direct a hit is, the less friction it will cause and the less electricity will spark. A truly skilled Hyuga will notice this and move accordingly, only taking a Juken shot when they are sure that they will not glance me. Neji pondered his situation. Through his Byakugan, he could see that Keisuke was slowly pouring his chakra into the ghostly arms that made up his seal, as was obviously required to maintain it. If I could stop his chakra flow, he thought, then it will nullify the technique. But will hitting his Tenketsus work? His eyes lingered on the Tenketsus, where the Ryude joined with the inner chakra system. Or does the Ryude block that power of ours? Keisuke leapt up into the tree after him, whirling his kunai in an aggressive, coordinated assault. Neji threw shuriken, forcing him to change course. Keisuke missed the branch, hit the trunk, ran up it to attempt to leap behind Neji.
Neji saw this and ran up the trunk after him, drawing his second kunai. They fought vertically there for a time, neither side gaining ground, neither power losing it. Every now and again, sparks would fly threateningly from Keisuke's seal, but no lightning struck. Neji was surprised that the metal of the knives did not conduct electricity between them, but then he noted that the seal did not quite extend to Keisuke's fingers, stopping at the back of the hand.
So the danger comes only from the seal, Neji thought, not from the user. When Keisuke left himself a small opening, Neji dropped one kunai and used his fingers to deliver a small jolt of chakra to the right side of his chest, where a small patch of skin was not covered by the seal. It was not enough to really damage Keisuke, but it had the intended effect. The blind man staggered back a little bit, and slackened his grip on his weapons. Neji was in position to try his next idea. Juken who? Hake Rokujuiensho? Keisuke's eyebrows arched in surprise. He hadn't had this used on him in a long time. 2 strikes. 4, 8, 16, 32, 64. The blows all landed correctly, Neji was certain of that. He'd hit every Tenketsu. Some of them had jolted him slightly with a spark of electricity, but the jolt was choked off as the ghostly arm was dislodged from its seal. Keisuke was driven back up the tree, trying desperately and in vain to mount some kind of counter-offensive. When it was finished, the seal was gone. Yet, Keisuke still clung to the tree with the chakra at his feet, though the Rokujuyan Sho was supposed to stop all chakra flow. Neji's eyes widened slightly in amazement. The possessors of the Rokujuyan Ryude were completely immune to Hyuga Tenketsu manipulation. Impressive, Keisuke-san, he said. Your power prevents me from stopping your chakra flow. It is indeed a formidable ability against the Hyuga style.
You aren't bad, yourself, young man, Keisuke returned. You didn't stop my chakra, it's the truth. But you hit all of the Tenketsus accurately, and triggered a troublesome reflexive action. Haruka figured out a while back that pushing on a Tenketsu will force the arm to straighten itself, sort of like hitting a human knee joint will trigger the kicking reflex. You effectively broke my seal, Neji-san. The lightning that troubled you is gone.
Neji nodded. He'd seen this himself with his Byakugan. Your move, Keisuke-san. Keisuke started to form a new seal, but Neji saw it and launched a new assault, breaking his concentration. Gripping his weapons firmly, Keisuke parried and returned the favor. The two leapt from tree to tree, Keisuke's blades flashing. Neji parrying with one blade and readying himself to juken him with his free hand when Keisuke slipped up.
Numerous times, Keisuke attempted to form a new Kokuin seal, but always Neji saw it and stopped it by either attacking too furiously for Keisuke to be able to concentrate or by striking a Tenketsu or two, disrupting the formation. Eventually, Neji managed to get a solid hit on the blind man, the Juken hitting him squarely in the sternum. Keisuke fell several feet and landed on his back on a branch.
Ah, so you've come back for me after all? Cried a voice behind him. Is the danger gone, great shinobi? It's very uncomfortable here. I've come close to being attacked by several man-eating mosquitoes and eye-gouging gnats, but fortunately, they've seen the powerful youth within me and known that it was not my time. Keisuke rolled his head back to see Guy behind him. Eye-gouging gnats, huh? Yes. Vicious, undynamic little beasts that would have rendered me more blind than you had I not been so youthful. Have you defeated the evil, horrible ninja yet?
Groaning, Keisuke climbed to his feet. Neji was waiting for him several branches up, emphasizing once again that he has all the time in the world, while mine only grows shorter. He was within striking range should Keisuke decide to try a new seal, but he obviously was interested in seeing what Keisuke had in mind next. No, Guy, I haven't. That is no surprise, Guy said. The opponent that you face is strong in his youth. He will be impossible to beat unless you match that dynamic youth with your own.
How's that possible? Keisuke wondered. The last time I checked, people grew older with time, not younger. He did not say this. He had no desire to have the man go into another impassioned speech as he had the last time he had been questioned. What he said was, I have one technique that I haven't tried on a Hyuga yet. I've been trying to save it for more dire circumstances. You should not hold it back, Guy interrupted. If these are not dire circumstances, you at a disadvantage before a genius, your career on the line, then what are? Keisuke thought about those words. He did have a point. My own student, Rock Lee, said Guy, forgetting all pretense of being in character, wished to save his trump card for his greatest challenge. Yet he realized that if he did not use it then, there was a great chance that he would never arrive at that challenge. Though he lost his fight, his youthful spirit was a great and moving example to all who watched. A moment passed in which Keisuke finally began to consider the possibility that perhaps Maeda Guy was not completely useless after all. You are right, of course, he finally said. If I don't make Junin rank, then I will find my dream more difficult to achieve. If I use my trump card, I will ensure my success at this point, though I won't be able to surprise my opponent later. It's a choice between a challenge now and a challenge later, possibly being stopped here versus knowing you will at least have the chance to get to the goal. He glanced up at Neji. Your student was wise, Guy, if not victorious. I think I'll follow his example. Ah, the spirit of youth, Guy cried. I know you will be successful. Yosh, Keisuke. Go. Smiling, the blind man turned back to his opponent and began the alterations that would turn the tide of the battle. From his perch in a young black walnut tree, Naruto watched Kiba and Hinata walk to a new clearing, the old one still suffering from the thorough soaking that Naruto had inflicted upon it. The fresh clearing was smaller, but mercifully dry. Shino walked with them, settling beneath the tree that Naruto was hanging from. Naruto called a word of encouragement to Hinata, with pleasing results. Kiba yelled up to him in feigned anger and real annoyance, to which Naruto smiled evilly. Hinata, whose blood had climbed up into her face, faced him and responded affirmatively, swearing to give her all. Despite himself, Naruto felt that unfamiliar, pleasant feeling that he'd been getting around Hinata since his return. It's good that she's so self-confident now, he told himself. In his mind he was convinced that he was enjoying seeing the once self-underestimating girl grow into a self-assured woman while still remaining a good person. While this was a true fact, it was only part of the source of the feeling. His body had other ideas, ones that became more pronounced as the match began. It was a warm day. Hinata had removed her jacket. Naruto, being a still developing but fully functional young man, reacted accordingly. He watched Kiba and Akamaru charge her, angling in at different directions. He saw Hinata dance around them both. He witnessed Kiba turn and fling a barrage of kunai knives at her, and saw her swat them from the air effortlessly with a brief slicing movement, her chakra lancing out like a sword to cut the projectiles down. Naruto observed Akamaru pounce on her from the rear, bore witness to Hinata's light somersault out of harm's way in her subtle retaliation. Her movements were graceful, elegant, precise, and subtle. This was no battle. This was a dance, almost like an ice show, but that Hinata needed no skates to glide across the dirt. Within minutes, Kiba and Akamaru were completely forgotten, Naruto held in thrall by the beautiful dance. This is better than that time Keisuke and Ero Sennin went into the bar together to watch those women dance around that pole, he thought wistfully. Suddenly, Naruto was struck with a realization. Jiraiya had waved money at those dancers, and the dancers had smiled at him. When the dance had ended, Jiraiya had gone with one of them through a door. When, after Naruto had attempted the same feat and Keisuke had dragged him out of the bar, he asked what was going on in the room. Keisuke had explained. Jiraiya-sama waved the money to show that he enjoyed the dance, Keisuke said. That room back there is where the dancer's safe is. The dancer was showing Jiraiya where to put the money so that it would be safe for her while she was working. While Naruto had not believed a word of Keisuke's explanation, recognizing the harried tone that he'd been using, he had seen the dancer smile at Ero Sennin. Remembering that, and glancing at the spectacular show the pretty girl was putting on, Naruto was seized with a sudden desire to have Hinata smile that way at him. With his eyes still glued to the dance, he reached into his jacket for his wallet. Then his eyes went wide with horror. "Ah, Gama-chan is missing," he cried. Frantically, he took off his jacket, searched every pocket for some sign of his beloved frog-shaped wallet. "It's gotta be on me somewhere," he panted, tossing the jacket from the tree and proceeding to his pants. "Ooh! Juken!" Hinata slammed her palm into Kiba's gut, a direct hit. It was only a practice match, of course, so the blow had very little chakra in it, but the wild man got the message. He'd taken a direct hit twice now. Had they been real Juken hits, he'd be out cold, possibly dead. Kiba stepped back, fell to one knee, exhausted. "Good match, Hinata," he said. Akamaru bounded forward to his master's side, woofing his agreement. "Arigato, Kiba-kun. You, too." Hinata acknowledged the nod from Shino, then looked around for her team's guest. Concern spread to her heart as she realized that he wasn't nearby, and he wasn't in the tree he'd started in. Where did Naruto-kun go? Could he have run away, afraid to tell her what he thought of her performance? Was it possible that he found it unappealing? Boring? Not worth his time? She hung her head, and her eyes fell to the ground at her feet. They came to rest on an orange and black jacket. Immediately, her mood perked up. Naruto had not left. He wouldn't forget his jacket or his pants. She had now spotted the blonde ninja's sub-belt garb, lying 10 yards or so away and off to the left. Now she was getting a bit unnerved. He's naked somewhere. She turned a radical shade of red, imagining the boy strolling through the woods without any clothes. Then, a frustrated cry from above made her look up. Right into the folds of a black t-shirt, which fluttered down onto her head. Darkness enveloped her as the shirt's owner jumped from the tree he'd been searching, landing before her and her teammates. "I've lost him. I've lost Gama-chan," he proclaimed. For about 10 seconds, nobody said anything. Then, Naruto spoke again. "Huh? Hinata? What's my shirt doing on your head?" Hinata debated whether or not she should remove the shirt. An inner battle raged between two sides of her subconscious. She could take it off of her head and spare herself some embarrassment. She must have looked rather ridiculous at the moment. On the other hand, though, taking it off and handing it back to him involved her seeing Naruto without his shirt and without his pants. Was she ready for that yet? Plus, there was the small matter of her never having had her face pressed into his shirt. At that point, Kiba made a sharp whistle and said, "Whoa, somebody's been working out." Hinata's decision was made for her. Hurriedly, she whipped the garment off of her head, taking a step or two towards Naruto, who, thankfully, still wore his boxers, and held the shirt out to him. She made an effort not to stare at him. After the first glance, though, it was difficult not to. Kiba had not been kidding. Though compact, Naruto's well-muscled chest, arms, and thighs would definitely have won him at least an honorable mention in any bodybuilder competition. She couldn't stop the blush from creeping up her face as he pulled his pants and shoes back on. Naruto caught her. "What's the matter, Hinata? Is there something on me?" He turned to reach around his back, exposing his strong back. "Anyo. No. Nothing there." He looked at her in a confused, questioning way, wondering what the staring had been about. Hinata grew nervous watching his blue eyes search hers. Would he figure it out now? If so, was she prepared to answer for it? Finally, the blonde boy gave up, shrugged, and pulled his shirt back on, much to Hinata's relief. Not many things could reduce her to the verge of hysteria anymore, but this happy little situation was a rare and special occasion. The heavy crimson in her face began to fade away as Naruto turned to pick up his jacket. Once fully dressed, Naruto began muttering something unintelligible. Hinata thought she caught the words, Ero Sennin, wallet, money, and dancing, but decided not to think much of it. Her real focus was on another set of words. Now, how to go about getting him to say them. Kiba, again, came to the rescue. "So, Naruto," he said, putting an arm around his old friend's shoulder, What did you think of that little match? Naruto gave a nervous smile. Well, to tell the truth. This was it. He was going to tell her. Tell Kiba, really, but she would hear it too, so what did it matter? How he liked her display. Among the reasons she'd had to work so hard these past 3 years, this one moment was one of the most important. This was the man whose words had helped her to become the success she was today. His opinion meant the world to her, and he could propel her confidence through the sky or shoot it down in flames with a single remark. I really didn't see most of it. I lost my wallet, see, and I've been running around looking for it so. The pilot of HMA, Hinata's mental airship, Confidence struggled to maintain altitude through the gray clouds. The co-pilot, reading the meters, was calling out, I can't get a reading at all, Captain. All we can see in these clouds is the color gray. Suddenly, the engine sputtered, and the propellers ground to a halt. Damn it, growled the captain. We need more information now, son. HMA Confidence hung suspended for a moment, then began to slowly sink. Hey, but you know what? Naruto said, those first few minutes were awesome. Hinata's moving this way, that way, nothing touching her, then bam. Direct shot on Dog Breath's guts. Oh, sorry Kiba, you were alright, too. Kiba didn't really look that hurt. He'd been trying to get Naruto to talk about this, after all. But anyway, that was really amazing, Hinata. You moved like you were gliding over some kinda cloud, or something. The clouds parted around the HMA Confidence, revealing the sun. Its heat burned away the gray and kick-started the engine. The propellers whirred to life once again. The captain smiled. Take her up, number 2. High as she'll go. Hinata's smile and blush illuminated her face more brightly than the sun. Naruto, looking at her, forgot about everything else. Screw waving money around. Compliments do the job just fine. Better than fine, he added. Arigato, Naruto-kun. Ukesuke's face screwed up in concentration. Neji only wondered for a moment what he could be doing before dropping from his perch to attempt to stop him. Whatever it was, it sure did seem to require much focus, and techniques like that tended to be either highly specialized or highly dangerous. Neji was betting on the latter. Ready for this, Keisuke flung a kunai at the branch that Neji would land on in mere seconds. Not wasting his breath on a battle cry, he formed the seal that would detonate the chakra, blowing the branch out from underneath Neji, who was forced to leap backwards to avoid the wooden shrapnel. Unfortunately, there were no branches to cling to in that direction, so Neji had to wait for himself to hit the ground before he could run back up to Keisuke. That would take too much time. The Hyuga Junin would not be able to stop the blind man. Grim-faced, Neji watched Keisuke perform his change. What he saw astonished him. 32 of the ghostly arms had bent over double, each reaching over to one of its neighbors. Neji fought to keep himself from gaping in awe as these neighbors were ripped from their tenketsus entirely and spun around the arms that had freed them, being absorbed by them. Keisuke's chakra coursed through both sets of 32 with an alarming intensity, fusing them together. To Neji's eyes, the glow of chakra was blinding. Metamorphosis complete, Keisuke said. Behold, Sanjuni Ryude, 32 ghostly arms. Sanjuni Ryude. Neji murmured, I see, by detaching an arm and fusing it together with another, you strengthen each individual arm. The chakra capacity is more than doubled, and the arms are even semi-solid. He pondered a little bit. I suppose that this would make your Kakuin seals more effective? Keisuke smiled wide. Not only that, but the doubled strength of the individual arms enables them to resist that troublesome reflexive impulse that comes from having their tenketsus struck. The chakra capacity of each new superarm is 2.5 times that of a normal one, and, as you say, the power of my Kakuin and trap seals is magnified by a similar factor. Amazing, Keisuke-san, Neji said. Whatever the outcome of this battle, I have truly enjoyed seeing this. I've enjoyed it likewise, Keisuke said. Although, the Sanjuni Ryude is far from flawless, he thought to himself. It's visible to normal human eyes, and it leaves me with less to feel around with. And over time, the abnormal amount of chakra pulsing through the arms will slowly corrode them. At my current level, I can only make it last about 5 minutes. After that, all the arms waste away, and they won't grow back until tomorrow. Grimacing at the prospect of being without his feelers for a whole day, Keisuke set himself to do what must be done. His kunai he raised high into the air, as if challenging the sky. Neji watched and waited. That's a lot of power he's channeling. I wouldn't be surprised if he really feels drained after this. He must be planning a last-ditch, high-power offensive, to finish the fight as quickly as possible. I wonder what it is. He saw the bright super arms twist and writhe, shining with power, into a formation on Keisuke's skin. Lightning again? When the seal finished, Keisuke brought the hand holding the kunai down hard and fast, cutting Guy's bonds. What? Neji thought. Surely his old instructor couldn't have impacted Keisuke so much that he was carrying him into battle now, so what could he be doing? Oh, no, the realization came too late. Keisuke had grabbed Guy by the waist.
Shisoku no Kokuen, carved seal of progression, dashing, running, sprinting, whatever word you could use for it, it wasn't enough. Keisuke's speed-enhancing seal, multiplied by 2.5, resulted in a torso and a head with blurred-out legs cruising for the gate. He reached it in 6 seconds. Neji, who hadn't had quite the equivalent of Rock Lee's grueling speed training, arrived 12 seconds after that. Crafty as a Junin should be, Neji mused.
When all of them stood outside of the enclosure together, Keisuke dropped Guy unceremoniously to the ground. Which Guy approved, seeing as it was a dynamic climax. Neji did not look at Guy, however. He looked straight at Keisuke in wonder.
You outthought me, he said. I felt for certain that you would want to finish that battle, but you did as an elite shinobi would, achieving the objective with as little hesitation as possible. I acknowledge my failure.
Don't call it your failure, Keisuke replied, but rather think of it as my victory, Neji-san. And yours as well, if you buy into my dream.
Neji recalled him talking about his dream earlier. Would you explain this dream of yours for me, Keisuke-san?
It could take a while to tell you the whole story. We'll send Guy-sensei to the medical unit for analysis, and I'll take that map you've got there, Neji said. He motioned for an attendant to carry Guy away, and extended his hand for the paper. Is that blood on it? Never mind. Turn off your Ryude and sit down. You can tell me the story while we wait for your score. Keisuke grimaced. Unfortunately, I can't turn it off, Neji-san, or even reduce it. The change is irreversible. Irreversible? Neji asked, curious. You aren't like this permanently, are you? Oh, no, you'll see them fade out completely in about 2 minutes. They'll have corroded into nothing, and I'll be totally blind until they regrow overnight. I see, said Neji. So like most power in the world, this one does not come without sacrifices. Indeed, Keisuke said. But now, I have a story to tell. I'll tell you what I told Haruka and Sakura-san. It took a while to tell, but by the end of it, Keisuke had found himself another ally in his life's quest. And when it was finished, the attendant returned with Keisuke's score. To say that Hinata was on cloud 9 was an understatement. Her day had begun as normally as it ever did these times. She woke up shortly after dawn, practiced with Neji-ni-san, ate breakfast, meditated to practice her chakra control in the garden, checked with Hokage-sama to see if there were any missions for her, went to the market. A perfectly routine morning. However, that was where the normalcy ended. On her way home from the market, she had met her beloved Naruto-kun and his friends at Keisuke-san's new home, and Naruto had agreed. Whether or not it was out of boredom, she did not know, and now in the afterglow of the glorious day did not care to join her and her teammates for their afternoon practice. She had borne witness to Naruto's new and fascinating skill, watched him defeat her teammate Shino against difficult odds, and, this part brought the red color back to her face, glanced at his unclothed torso, a memory which would linger forever and give her even stranger dreams than normal tonight. Best of all, Naruto had seen her practice match, and, though admittedly he was distracted throughout most of it, he had looked her in the eyes and confessed that he had liked what he'd seen. He'd called it awesome and amazing, and given her that glorious smile that she loved so much. All of Hinata's dreams of changing herself from a hesitant, weak person into a strong woman worthy of acknowledgement had now been realized. She had her father's respect, the village's open support, Neji-ni-san's willing help, and now she had her Naruto-kun's acknowledgement and even his lavish praise. If an enemy shinobi had hacked her to pieces that very moment, she almost would not have cared. The fact that Naruto was walking next to her on her way home was icing on the cake. Her still dominant shy aspect prevented her from singing her happiness, but that was fine, since Naruto seemed to be able to do enough talking for the both of them. He cheerfully went on and on and on about a seemingly endless number of topics, including the difficulties during his match with Shino, the similarities between that match and another battle that he'd fought during his travels, further praise for Hinata's excellent performance, more blushing. Similarities and differences between her and his friend Haruka, whom Hinata had not yet met, the entertainment value of the rivalry between Haruka and Keisuke. It's really funny, the lengths they'll go to make each other look inferior, he said. Haruka beats Keisuke, and Keisuke genjutsus her in a random public place so that she hears things and flips out. Keisuke beats Haruka, and he wakes up wondering why everyone is staring at him funny until Jiraiya asks what that picture of him, the one with him passed out in a dumpster, naked, with a bloody head and a stray kitten attached to his face, is doing, posted up all over town. Hinata giggled softly at that remark and kept listening to him, all her cares forgotten, as he went on to explain how Keisuke was such a great guy, if a little over-relaxed in his free time, how he'd taught Naruto all about the Rokujuan Ryude, how versatile it was, and how awesome it would be if it were, as he thought, a bloodline limit jutsu. Hinata wondered about this last part herself. If he bears his own Kekkei Genkai, then because he is an orphan, he is the heir to its legacy. That puts him on a politically equal level with me. She tuned Naruto out for a little while, caught up in daydreams involving a politically arranged marriage that would eventually turn into a passionate love. As she let her imagination run rampant, her thoughts raised more blood to her face and caused her blonde companion to look at her with concern. He brought his blue eyes level with hers and said, "Hey, Hinata, you sick or something? You're turning an interesting neon red there." Hinata shook her head, insisting truthfully that nothing was wrong. Things could not be going more right, she thought. Naruto kept his eyes warily on her for a moment, then continued talking. "All right. So anyway, the Ryude is great for a lot of things, and I don't think I even know half of its uses yet. So far, I know Tamashii no Kyuubi, Keisuke's Kakuin seals, trap seals. Keisuke says I'm pretty creative with those. The arms make great motion sensors, too. And then there's those elemental lightning strikes. You saw me use one of those on Shino." Oh, yeah. The synchronization technique. Hinata was curious about this one, and about the enthusiastic manner in which Naruto mentioned it. "Synchronization, Naruto-kun?"
"Yeah," he said. "It's awesome when you use it with the right person. Keisuke and Haruka do it all the time, when they aren't harassing each other. It gives both people complete access to their combined chakra pool, and they can even feel, see, and hear everything that the other person does. The way it works, the person with the Ryude sticks some of his arms into the other person's tenketsu and then—"
"Anyo. Naruto-kun?" Hinata interrupted gently. Naruto was surprised at the polite interruption. Hinata had been practically silent through the whole trip. But he shrugged it off and smiled at her, eager to explain the arcane workings of his and Keisuke's unique art. "What's up, Hinata? Got a question?" "Yes. How can you link the arms between your tenketsus and the other person's if you can't see them?" "Good question," Naruto said. "Not even I really have the hang of it yet. Keisuke says that the best way to do it is let the arms themselves tell you what to do. Meaning that since you know where your own tenketsus are by where your ghostly arms are attached, you can imagine where they are on the other person and feel them out easily. He says that if you do it often enough it becomes an automatic thing, where you can find them without really thinking about it. I guess I'm not at that point yet, though." He grinned sheepishly, unaccustomed to admitting his own shortcomings. "One day, though, I'll get it," he said, "and once I've got the perfect partner, maybe Kakashi-sensei or Sakura, we'll have enough power between us to beat the crap out of Orochimaru. I'll bring Sasuke back without a problem." Hinata had been about to calmly, offhandedly, or as close to such as the shy girl might have gotten, suggest synchronizing with a Byakugan user like Keisuke, but at the mention of Sasuke, she stopped. She remembered the conversation that Naruto had had with Kakashi-sensei, the one that she had eavesdropped on. She remembered the worry she had felt for Naruto, remembered acting like nothing was wrong all the way to practice while she inwardly prayed that he would come through this mess alive and whole. Uchiha Sasuke almost killed Naruto-kun the last time they met. If they meet again, fight again. At their level, there will be no almost this time. This line of thinking progressed down its dark path only a few moments longer before Hinata stopped it. Worrying for Naruto's safety would not do anything to his benefit. She knew that bringing Uchiha back into the light was very important to him, and he would not relent until he had done it. It's a promise of a lifetime, Sakura-chan. I'm not going to take back my words, that's my Nindo. It is my Nindo as well, Naruto-kun, she thought. Naruto's fist was still raised in a silent oath, renewing the promise to retrieve Sasuke or die. She brought her small hands up to the fist and clasped it. The reaction was immediate. Naruto jerked his head towards her with surprise on his face, which multiplied when he saw her serious eyes boring into him. It was an intense gaze, one that he had seen only one time before. Moments before their first Chunin examination, when Hinata had insisted that he was not a regular dropout, but a proud failure who became stronger because of his mistakes. He had had a similar reaction then. His eyes had gone wide, almost in shock, as they did now. There were differences between that time and this one. This time, Hinata's pleading outburst was physical, not verbal. Last time, they had stood a good 10 feet away, at least. This time, she was right there in front of him. Last time, Naruto's mental response was 4 words. Damn, Hinata's pretty cool. This time, it had been shortened to only 3 words. Damn, Hinata's pretty. He lowered his fist to side, and Hinata's hands followed it, clinging to it, gently demanding that he pay attention. Naruto-kun. Ehehe. Yeah, Hinata. Naruto-kun, when you were speaking to Kakashi-sensei earlier, I was listening. Now she didn't touch him to get his attention. His eyes were riveted to her now. A situation that she almost would have killed for on any less serious occasion. His face had darkened slightly. So, you know, huh?
Yes, Naruto-kun, I never liked Sasuke-san much, but...
Who would? Naruto said, his voice uncharacteristically quiet. He's a bastard, a traitor, a genius who thinks he's entitled to everything, who'll sell out anyone, even himself, just kill his own brother. He trailed off, apparently in some mental distress. Hinata took the opportunity to continue speaking. I never liked him much, but I know how important it is to you to bring him back, him being your teammate and all. Naruto couldn't say anything, his face growing darker still, his eyes falling from her towards the ground at his feet. She knew he was reliving his last encounter with Sasuke, playing it over and over in his mind until he grew emotionally sick. I also know how dangerous it could be to save him, and, well, I worry for you, Naruto-kun. Naruto's head lifted back into her eyes. Hinata? You worry about me? Hinata's face rapidly turned pink. Ah, yes, Naruto-kun, because... Of course, Naruto said, knocking himself in the head with his free hand as if remembering something that was common knowledge. It's because we're such great friends. How did I forget that? I'd have worried about you if Kiba were out to kill you, or some such thing. Hinata just stared for a moment, dumbstruck. It seemed that even though Naruto had matured in mind and body, there was still much left over in his common knowledge that differed from everyone else's. Hinata, however, still could not overcome her shy aspect to correct him. Anyway, you don't have to worry about me, he went on. If I'm right, Sasuke has enough good left in him to not kill me right away. I'll have the chance to talk him out of whatever it is he plans on doing. Hinata smiled wanly at him. I'm sure that you can do it, Naruto-kun, she said, but... That a girl? Naruto exclaimed. I knew if I couldn't count on anyone else to have faith in me, I could still count on you. Slightly exasperated at all the interruptions, Hinata raised her voice a decibel, something that she almost never did, though now she felt it necessary. Naruto-kun. He shut up. Once again, his eyes were large with surprise, and he was listening intently. Satisfied, Hinata continued, I know I can't stop you from doing this dangerous thing, and I know that you have the strength to do it. But I also know that Sasuke-san might be very strong as well. We don't know for sure, but he could be far more powerful than you. If you cannot talk him down. She paused, briefly imagined Naruto impaled on a large katana, his life's blood splashing all over the ground, his body spasming, thrashing, then relaxing into death. Shaking her head violently, she banished the image, forced herself to continue speaking. I know you are truly strong, Naruto-kun, and there is nobody who can deny that anymore. But I won't be able to stop worrying until it's over with, unless I am there with you. Naruto's blue pupils focused with the intensity of laser beams into her own pleading white eyes. She knew he was seeking for the true motivation. Was he beginning to suspect? It didn't matter now. While she had his attention, she had to finish making her case. Not only for you, Naruto-kun. Sakura-chan is mixed up in this, too, she said. Deep within herself, she wages an inner war. Part of her knows that Sasuke-san betrayed her and everyone in the village, and wants to stay away, and the other part, the part that prevails right now, believes that he can be saved, and because she loves him still, she clings to this belief and strengthens herself for the trouble ahead. Sakura-chan is my friend, Naruto-kun, and so are you. Both of you will go to extremes to take Sasuke-san back, and I worry that it will be the end of you. I don't want it to be. Her eyes were glistening now with unshed tears. Still they held Naruto, commanded his deference to her fears. I want to help you too, Naruto-kun. For your sake and for mine. Her voice slowly lowered until it was almost a whisper. As she finished, her head drooped, her mind exhausted by the emotional effort. Her hands still held his clenched fist tightly, but she had no more to say. The hands demanded his speech now, rather than his attention. He was at loggerheads with himself. Hinata's offer was good and kind, and Naruto would rather have given up ramen for 3 days than refuse a kind offer from a pretty girl, especially after such an impassioned plea. On the other hand, though, Hinata was a good person with her whole, rich life ahead of her and, as he was growing ever more aware, beautiful, it would be a shame to see her throw away her life. For a while they merely stood there on the street, alone except for the flickering of the night lamps, coming on as the sun began to set. Hinata waited patiently as Naruto turned things over in his mind, weighing the merits of accepting her help and of refusing. As the silence dragged on, her grip on his fist tightened. What am I supposed to say? He asked. He was saved from his decision, for the moment, by the appearance of a short young man in clothing similar to Naruto's, who dropped from the street lamp he'd been perching on. He landed awkwardly and had to catch himself with one hand to keep from hitting his face on the pavement. Both Naruto and Hinata turned to face him, mutely surprised at his sudden dropping in.
Ah, said the young man, picking himself up, I'm still not used to my normal body, damn it. He was pale in complexion, had long, straight black hair, and bland facial features that wouldn't have looked out of place in any crowd.
Hinata gasped lightly in recognition. Ah, you are one of those copies. The mass-produced doppelgangers who took Naruto-kun's form to attack the village. Naruto stared. So that's what they really looked like. NO234, at your service, said the former Naruto clone, bowing clumsily. Why are you here? Asked Hinata, watching him warily and looking for indicators of hostility. Now, Hyuga-san, replied 0234, I've been questioned enough, I think. Ask Ibiki yourselves. He'll tell you that I've spilled just about everything for your sakes. He paused, then grinned ominously. Well, almost everything. Neither Naruto nor Hinata relaxed. Quit trying to mess with our heads, or I'll show you how my head can mess with you, said the blonde. Sabaku no Gara can tell you all about how that feels. The grin dropped from N234's face. He sighed. All right. First I'll tell you why I didn't tell Ibiki what I'm about to tell you, he began. Now listen. The Uchiha is here on Orochimaru's behalf, as you could have guessed. He's been sent as a response to a message sent by a political figure in Konoha. One that wants to ally with Orochimaru to crush Konoha, for reasons that grunts like me aren't told.
NO234 had told Ibiki these things, but all this information was new to Naruto. His face was screwed up, thinking over the words, absorbing the information. Keep talking.
The former clone nodded. Now, this guy that I don't know provides the Uchiha with all the information that Konoha's council has that he needs, such as what shinobi are deployed where at any given time, who the Hokage is meeting with, what decisions are being made, and what information is being tortured out of prisoners.
Now, I know that I'm going to be killed off anyway, said the clone, at which Hinata and Naruto started. He held up his hand to silence them. Listen, it's the truth. Uchiha and his accomplices don't let those of us who get captured live. They assassinate them to prevent us from spilling, or, if it's too late for that, they do it to get revenge for our spilling. I knew that I'd be dead the moment they got a chance, so I decided to spill as much as I could. But I held one thing back, for a good reason. Since the Uchiha knows everything that Konoha knows, he'd be able to evacuate before the village mustered a raiding party. I thought it would be better if I held off on telling the whole village, and instead try to tell you, the one person that the Uchiha doesn't count on to know anything and so isn't spying on.
A change came over Naruto. He was shaking with excitement, and his eyes were bright with hope. Evacuate? He asked in a voice that trembled like his body. Where? Where? The grin returned. The place where I, along with my 1,000-odd brothers, every one of us bred from genetically manipulated Kedwai clan blood, were born into the world with the purpose of wreaking havoc. Orochimaru's old laboratory. All right. Naruto half shouted. I'm going to tell Kakashi-sensei and Sakura, and we'll go in after that bastard first thing tomorrow.
Hey, said 0234, there's no guarantee that he's still there. There's no guarantee that he was ever there, really. That's just where we were all made. I'm saying that, because I didn't spill that fact, the Uchiha doesn't have any pressing reason to abandon the facility. There might be something there, there might not. But since you don't have any leads, he finished, I figure it would be the best place to get one.
Hey, thanks, mister. Whatever you are, said Naruto appreciatively. He had a big smile on his face now. N0234. Naruto clone number 234, he replied. It's not a problem. I don't have any love for my creator, and this is the best way to be useful to his enemies before he gets me. He shrugged. I will warn you, though. He may not personally be there, but the manpower that he can create with those machines down there may prove overwhelming. Take all the backup you can get without making a big noise about it. I understand, said the blonde. Good luck. Luck. Right, said the clone bitterly. Like I'll need it in the afterlife. The only consolation I need from you is the death of my creator. Don't worry. I'll make sure that bastard pays his dues. You do that, kid, said the former clone as he walked away. You do that. They watched him go. Both Naruto and Hinata stood in silence another moment, contemplating the sad nature and horrible destiny he'd been born into. All a product of Sasuke's darkness, the child of Orochimaru's evil. He'll get what's coming to him, Naruto swore, that's a promise. Hinata looked at him, a question in her eyes. Naruto-kun. You know, Hinata, Naruto said, you're really a great person. It would be really sad if you got hurt following me into this. He's going to turn my offer down, she thought. Balling up her hands into pained fists, she prepared to speak her grudging acceptance of his decision. But then, Naruto continued, a smile crossing his once dark face, he did say to bring all the backup I can get without making a big noise. And I think I can trust you to keep this pretty quiet, nay, Hinata? Hinata looked into his eyes, not quite believing, was he going to? Naruto-kun? Hinata, he said, if I'm going down into a rat's nest like the snake bastard's old labs, I'll need good eyes to watch my back. So you're going to have to come with me after all. The pale-eyed young woman in front of him lit up like a light bulb after a blackout. The extraordinary happy look on her face spread to his. Ironic, he thought. Normally I'm supposed to have the contagious energy. Naruto-kun, thank you, that's better, Naruto said. I think I always liked you better smiling. I'm glad I'm letting you help. You would have been unhappy then, and unhappy people don't smile so well. He started down the street, heading towards Sakura's home. Come to the gates of the village around 9 tomorrow morning. I'll drag Kakashi-sensei there by his mask, if I have to, as long as he's on time. I will, Naruto-kun. I promise. Hinata's face practically glowed. After all the great things that had happened today, now she would finally be of some real use to the young man that she admired. Naruto waved, shouted, "Ya-ne," and ran off into the orange of the setting sun. Hinata's gaze rested on his retreating back for a moment, and then she, too, moved along. Emerging from the base of the tower, Haruka checked her map and began heading for her new lodgings. According to the Human Resources Department, it was one of the first buildings that had been completed in the new housing district being constructed near the outer edge of the village. Haruka noted glumly that it was placed far from and on the opposite side of the village from the Hyuga compound. While this served her well for safety purposes, it did not good to her spirit to be forced out of her ancestral home. Sighing, she put those thoughts out of her mind. Now was not the time to be moping about. Now that she had Keisuke's support, it would be only a matter of time before that terrible system was out of place. Then, the branch would have no more reason to begrudge anyone, and in their newfound freedom, they would not notice or care if she walked in and took an empty room. This optimism carried her down the street with her head held high. She kept alert for Branch Hyuga light-heartedly as she strode toward her temporary home away from home. However, her trip was put on hold when she saw the young girl, the heiress to her clan, moving along towards her from the opposite end of the street that she was currently on. Matches the description perfectly, Haruka thought. No doubt about it, that's the one. So this is what she looks like all grown up. If Naruto-kun doesn't keel over in homage just looking at her, there's something wrong with the boy. Hinata was an important piece in the game that Keisuke was playing against the Hyuga system. Haruka stepped in front of the girl, bowing low. I am sorry that I have never done you proper honor before, she said, Hinata-sama. The younger Hyuga looked her over. She registered the braided black hair, the tall, slender figure, the glint in her white eye that suggested that she might be serious, or she might not. In a moment, Hinata recognized her for the person that Naruto had told her about, the one that had traveled with him and Keisuke and Jiraiya for 2 years. You are Haruka-san, aren't you? Hinata asked. Oh, so Naruto-kun has told you about me after all, said Haruka, rising from her bow and standing in a relaxed poise before her. Hi, he did. Are you enjoying being back home? Hinata caught the brief flicker of pain in Haruka's face. Clearly, Haruka was not enjoying herself in Konoha. Soon enough, however, a cheerful look came back onto her mien, covering up whatever displeasure she had been thinking of. It's not so bad, she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. Although, Keisuke certainly seems to be having fun. Have to remember to show him up later. Ah, but that's another story. It isn't every day that you meet your future clan head for the first time. No, Hinata said. I don't suppose it is. A slight smile spread onto her lips. This woman had the graces and the ability of the Hyuga, yet she possessed the easygoing, self-reliant attitude that was characteristic to Naruto. Minus the tendency to be obnoxiously loud, of course. Hinata was beginning to like her. So, I've heard that you only recently were named the official successor, Haruka said. Am I correct, Hinata-sama? Hi, that is true, Hinata responded. Father announced it before the Konoha Elder Council members last month. Congratulations! Haruka exclaimed, clapping the girl on the shoulder. I had thought that you would. There is no way that Keisuke and Naruto-kun would flap their mouths about it endlessly just so that we could come home and find out that you'd failed. Hinata flushed slightly upon hearing that Naruto had talked of her so proudly. Ah. Thank you, Haruka-san. Now, we can drop the san right there, Haruka said. Naruto-kun and I are great friends, and any friend of his is easily a friend of myself. I see. I understand, Haruka. That works, said the older Hyuga, grinning pleasantly. Now then, about this rumor I've heard. Hinata tensed. If this was the rumor that she was thinking of, and if she knew the evil look in Haruka's eye correctly, then this might not end well. Is it the truth that you have slept with Uzumaki Naruto-kun? The crash of Hinata's skull on the pavement was audible throughout a half-mile radius. Several people poked their heads out of their windows to get a better look. When they saw who it was, they shrugged and returned to their business, having seen this several times previously. Looks like someone's been making up yet more ridiculous Naruto scuttlebutt, they said to themselves. Haruka regarded her with amazement. Naruto is right. She really is weird around him. Judging from the thoroughly shocked nature of your reaction that the rumor is not true, she said. Oh, of course it isn't, Haruka, Hinata said, very flustered. Nonetheless, Haruka said, I have information from numerous sources, Keisuke, Sakura-san, and Ichiraku Tuchi to name a few. That you wouldn't mind if someday it was true. No, I'm not finished yet, Hinata-sama. She held up her hand to silence the stuttering reply that Hinata had begun. As a member of the branch house, it is my responsibility to look out for your best interest. I can tell you truthfully that Naruto-kun holds you in very high regard, and considering all that he has told me of your past exploits, he does so for good reason. He respects you for the effort you put in to better yourself. That's one advantage you have. A contented grin found its way to Hinata's face as she remembered the afternoon's events. She certainly could not deny this point. You are one stunningly pretty girl. I have heard men and women alike of all ages in this village speak of it, and I see now that their admiration is well placed. That is your second advantage. This also Hinata could not deny. The number of cheerful compliments, jealous glances, and unqualified suitors that she had received spoke for itself. Haruka moved closer to her, put both hands on her shoulders, and lowered herself to eye level with the younger girl. If you act now, Hinata, you can have him without a fight. You are already in his good favor. All you need to do is push a little, and he will fall right into your arms. He has lost interest in Sakura-san over his absence. Nobody can oppose you. Ah, but... Haruka. Hinata was having difficulty speaking. How did a simple first meeting between clans women turn into this? No one, not even Sakura, had spoken so urgently to her about Naruto. Yet she also knew, deep within herself, that nobody had ever spoken so truthfully. I have spoken to both Keisuke and Sakura-san, and they both agree that there is no better time than now, Haruka finished. I understand that for a shy person like you it might be difficult. But then, you've been able to overcome all your other obstacles so far. This is just one more hurdle to clear. The older Hyuga's words rang in Hinata's mind like a bell of hope. She could imagine triumph, victory, and the spoils that would be hers, if only she would just reach out and take them. Yet the old fear in the back of her mind fought that hope, lashed savagely at it. It was the fear of rejection, and it was a force that would not be denied. Hope had dawned too slowly this time. It could not get up enough momentum to drive it back. Hinata's voice was steady and quiet. I understand that you are trying to help me, she said, and I appreciate it. You are a good person, Haruka, but you still do not think you're ready. Haruka sighed. The girl's shy aspect and fear of rejection were tough brick walls. Her words were as strong as the stream of a pressure washer, capable of flaying skin from bone. However, though she'd gotten through Hinata's skin, she would need a bulldozer before she could clear those brick walls. If you're not ready soon, she said, then someone else will begin to see him in the same light that you do, and then you will begin to lose hope. If that happens, you will never be ready. She shook her head in part faked, part real disappointment. A shame. I'd hoped that the clan would come out of this with two strong leaders rather than just one. But that isn't my place to decide, is it? Oh well. She acted as though she was about to leave, then faked remembering something. Oh, Hinata-sama, she said. If you're going to pass up the chance, I suppose I can at least offer you some consolation. She threw an envelope to Hinata, whose hand caught it by reflex. She saw the younger girl look down at it cautiously. It seemed that she somehow already knew what was in there and was afraid to look. Smiling, Haruka turned to leave once more, and found herself face to face with Keisuke, who was being guided by another young Hyuga. The former smiled happily, apparently pleased with himself about something, while the latter tapped him on the shoulder, getting his attention. Haruka wondered what Keisuke was doing, letting himself be led around by this other Hyuga. She flicked on her Byakugan, trying to find out what was going on with him. The young man said, Keisuke-san, Hinata-sama and another Hyuga are here. Keisuke, Haruka gasped, your Ryude is gone, how? I suppose I was too strong for my own good, Keisuke said, grinning maniacally. I'll be a registered Junin level shinobi by tomorrow. Just have to drop by the tower one last time in the morning. My Ryude will have come back by then, there won't be any need to escort me. But you're blind now, Haruka said. You idiot, you burned up all your arms in one fight? No, not fighting, Keisuke said. I kept them during the skirmishes. I lost them performing a final evasive maneuver. TCH, Haruka mock scoffed, smiling haughtily at him. So you spent them running away? Lazy coward. Hey, Keisuke challenged. It was not cowardice. I was completing my mission objective. Pa. I heard that your objective was to take some poor man through a pack of Chunin to a clearly labeled exit. You can't have needed that much power to get through that. For your information, Keisuke growled, it was not only a pack of Chunin. Neji-san, who is a skilled Junin and probably the best Hyuga fighter one have ever met, and a swarm of eye-gouging gnats were involved. Haruka, no longer faking annoyance, glared at him. The best Hyuga fighter one have ever met. Neji-san. That was a direct insult aimed at her, and both knew it. Her white eyes crackled dangerously, a sight that would have frightened away lesser men. Eye-gouging gnats. Keisuke's empty eye sockets glared right back at her. Unable to see Haruka's crackling eyes, he was unafraid. Yes. Neji and Hinata watched them nervously. Both could tell that if nobody intervened, things might not be pretty. Neji knew that Keisuke was in bad condition. To face such wrath now would not be good for him. Yet he could think of nothing to say that would stop them outright, so he thought it best that he and Hinata retreat for the moment. Clearing his throat loudly in the hope of distracting them, he turned to Hinata. "Well, then, Hinata-sama," he said, "I think we should be going now. We can leave Haruka-san to guide Keisuke-san home. I will escort you back to the Hyuga compound." Hinata, also sensing that withdrawal was best, agreed. "Hi, I think that is a good idea, Neji-ni-san. Haruka-san, Keisuke-san, good night." Keisuke and Haruka had turned their heads to them. "Good night, Hinata-san. Neji-san. An excellent match today. Thank you," Keisuke said. He saluted Neji, who nodded in response. Haruka came forward and took Hinata's hand. "Good night, Hinata-chan. It was good to finally see you in person." Then she leaned forward and whispered, "Tell your father, at least, if you can't tell him. He'll need to know eventually, too." Having exchanged all their goodbyes, the two pairs parted ways, with Neji and Hinata moving back to the Hyuga compound. Keisuke and Haruka were left to themselves. "I am not going to waste my time leading you home, blind idiot," Haruka said. "Huh. I wasn't going to suggest that you do. I don't need your help, anyway." This was mostly true. He was learning again to navigate as he used to, before he had obtained the Ryude. He had accepted Neji's guidance as courtesy. He could stumble home by himself. They stood apart and glared at each other a moment longer, then they relaxed, exasperated. Both were tired, and there were other things to speak of. Keisuke started off. "I see you've been working on Hinata-chan already. Any luck?" Haruka sighed heavily. "Not that I can see. She knows that what I say is right, but she lacks the will to follow through." Keisuke nodded. "As I expected. Don't worry about it. You are an older, more experienced woman, and a fellow Hyuga to boot. Your words will have an impact in good time. And Neji-san is with us now, too. He will help where he can." Haruka stared hollowly at him. There was doubt in her voice. "You really think this will work?" "Yeah, I really do," Keisuke said. "Fear of rejection is a powerful barrier, but it's been beaten before. Hinata is more than strong enough to beat it herself. She just needs to realize that strength, as she did when she first endeavored to change herself. I have as much faith in her as I do in Naruto. After all, they share the same Nindo." Haruka felt a little more at ease now. She knew that Keisuke was right, and had all along. It was just the despair from earlier trying to drown her. The dark water fell all around her, on top of her, splashed her body, soaked her to the bone, but she did not have to drink it. "All right, partner. I'll have a little more faith," she said. Her smile, though not seen by his sightless gaze, was picked up on nonetheless in her tone. Keisuke got the message. Keisuke started toward her, his own smile visible. "Haruka." She turned and started walking away. "You're still finding your own way home, though, blind idiot." Keisuke stumbled and nearly fell. "Damn that woman. I'm at least 3 centuries old, thanks to being encased in that block of ice. She ought to respect her elders." He sighed and began trudging back to his own house. He thought of his ambitions, old and new, his new existence in this village, and how the tapestry was all woven together. When he reached his gate, he thought, "Hiyashi. Neji tells me you've softened up. I'd like to believe it's true, since you finally embraced your daughter. But you still haven't done away with that barbaric system. You could have saved me a lot of trouble by killing both birds with the same stone." Keisuke left his gate locked and continued down the now empty street. It seemed that he still had one more visit to pay before this long day ended. The second garden of the Hyuga compound, bathed in evening twilight, was tranquil, secure, and beautiful. The small water wheel turned and turned again, generating its repetitive wooden clunk accompanied by the low, continuous splash of water. Put together with the symphonic ringing of the wind chimes in the summer breeze, the ambiance was very calming. Orange light from the setting sun illuminated the clouds on the horizon, reflecting off of the greenery and completing the peaceful serenity of the place. Nearer to the village, however, hovering over the shops and the houses and the government buildings remained the ominous black clouds that had been there since the day had dawned. They still had not released a single drop of precipitation. It seemed as though they might be waiting for some unheard signal from a distant god or demon, whose plans of mayhem, or divine justice, depending on the nature of the deity, did not yet call for the storm to strike. These dark were, with one other exception, the only thing that disturbed the peace of the evening. The other exception sat contemplatively on at one end of the garden, from which one could look upon the whole of the tranquil scene with a solid, protective wall of hedge behind him, shielding him from the world, locking him in the moment. But he did not look over the garden, he looked within himself. Though the hedges could keep him safe from the cares of the outside world, there was no escape from the baggage that rode on his person, fixed firmly in his mind. He thought of his old friend's return, about how her fellows had been so volatile to her, and what this all symbolized. Was it an omen, a reflection of bigger, more terrible events yet to transpire? Would there be retribution upon Haruka for her father's mistake, or could it be revenge against the branch for their mistreatment of Haruka? Haruka, he said softly, you had nothing to do with your father's cowardly retreat or the slaughter that followed. But I can do nothing to stop the anger of the branch. They
are beyond your control, suggested a voice above and behind him, too steeped in their fury to be held in thrall by a command. Could it be, Hyuga Hiyashi, that you are not as much the head of your clan as you once believed you were?
Hiyashi did not need to look to know who the speaker was. So, he said calmly, you've returned with her, have you? Then the rumors were truth. Keisuke climbed down the hedge, being careful not to lose his hold and crash into some unseen piece of garden art on the ground below. When he had touched down, he ambled around clumsily, looking for something to rest upon. Finding a rock by the pond near Hiyashi, he plopped down upon it with a relieved sigh. Hiyashi noted that the blind man was moving rather less easily than the last time they had met, but chose not to make a comment. Keisuke, firmly situated, answered, rumors? If you'd known I was on my way, Hiyashi, then I would have expected you to do something about it. Especially after the flashy pursuit force you sent last time. I prefer not to act on unconfirmed rumors, Hiyashi said, still not looking at him. This was honest truth. If he had believed half of the rumors that he had heard, then he would have been forced to disown Hinata several times over by now. Keisuke shrugged. Will you do anything now? It's the perfect chance. I am even more blind than normal and without my primary defense. Hiyashi considered for a moment, then said, no, not until I can guess your real motives. I had thought that you sought our destruction before, yet you fled and did not return, until now.
The Hyuga head turned to face his visitor. This time you come alone, and in weakness, yet your clumsy movements mask a sense of confidence that you did not have when you met me the first time. Perhaps you had no ill intentions before, but your aura. You were plotting something.
He paused as Keisuke gave him a toothy smile, and Hiyashi thought he caught a low chuckle. He came to another realization. You come to me unconcerned in your weakened state because you believe that you have already won. The smile on Keisuke's mouth was bordering on satanic as Hiyashi said this. Not quite, said the blind man. But you're right. I am very confident, it's already begun. What has? Hiyashi demanded, rising to his feet. When Haruka joined us, Keisuke said, seeming to ignore Hiyashi's question, she explained that you had thought me some imitation, a hooligan masquerading as your ancient ancestor, Keisuke of the Grave, trying to provoke superstition. When she found us and wrote you about the Rokujuyan Ryude, your theory became far more advanced. Hiyashi stared in surprise. So, Haruka was in league with you, after all. Yes, Keisuke replied. She has explained that you feared me, not for the Ryude itself, although it is a potent counter to the Tenketsu manipulation that your clan employs, but because the last person who possessed that ability tried to, and nearly did, incite a revolution within your ranks. You know the man of which I speak. He would have married your elder sister, if she had not been butchered by the rotting blood. Hiyashi stood stock still, old memory flashing in his eyes. Keisuke was correct. The man who had walked, tortured and ragged and bleeding, into Konoha with Hiyashi's older sister in his arms had possessed the Rokujuyan Ryude, though at that point he had barely discovered the most basic of its uses. And he had been about to marry Hiyashi's sister, against the wishes of all the elders and leaders in the clan, who had tried endless measures to stop him. Had she lived, the man would have been in a position to influence the clan. Hiyashi didn't want to remember. The sad day fixed itself firmly in his mind, however, and he grew pale, his silver-white eyes reflecting inner turmoil. And still Keisuke spoke. You believe that I was the offspring of this man, come in the semblance of your long-dead ancestor to finish the work that his father began. Thus undoing the work that Keisuke's runaway son, your clan's founder, completed. It was a good theory, I will admit. Hiyashi found his voice, sped forward, and grabbed the blind man by the shirt, lifted him up off the rock. So, you are his unacknowledged son. And you plan to use Haruka too. He stopped, suddenly finding himself the subject of a blind gaze that he would have expected after kicking Keisuke's dog. I would sooner become your willing slave than become one with that woman. Besides, Haruka is no safer here than I am, so I wouldn't have any influence from that. As to being the son of your late sister's fiancé. The gaze turned into one of regret. There have been many times when I've wished it were, but my father was not Uzumaki. Unlikely as it seems, I am the true Keisuke of the grave. You lie, Hiyashi said, the turmoil cresting within. The father of the first Hyuga is a frozen corpse, entombed in the farthest corner of the world. I know. My brother, Hizashi, found the sealed tomb, and we ourselves removed it from beneath this estate and brought it there. Keisuke chuckled, despite being manhandled by his distant descendant. So even then, when I was still a human popsicle, you feared me. You say that it is not possible for me to be alive, yet you removed me from here because you thought that it just might be true. Hiyashi shook his head. This man was infuriating him. He'd have to deal with him before he lost control and did something drastic. But you don't have to fear me anymore, Hiyashi. There's no way that I, skilled as I am with the Ryude, can change your barbaric clan system by myself. I am not an Uzumaki, who carries both the power and the opportunity to get inside your house and alter it from within. That honor has been granted to another. And I, as well as Haruka, will see that he gives you another reason to be afraid. And it seems as though your out-of-control branch house might help us, too. Hiyashi was about to deliver his juken to the man's heart, when Keisuke puffed into smoke in his hands. Deceived, he thought. He did not return to his rock, but stood at that spot for several minutes, contemplating what it was that he had just heard. Is it truly possible? He asked no one. Even though Hizashi and I moved his tune where nobody should have been able to follow. Has Haka no Keisuke really returned? Is Haruka, in fact, his ally against the clan? Hiyashi-sama, came the call of an attendant, a message from your friend, Haruka. Hiyashi accepted the letter from him and tore it open immediately. Hiyashi, I am sorry. I know that you would have helped me if you could have. But the branch members have shown that they will not relent, thus explaining why you cannot help. And also why I must side with Keisuke and with Naruto. Knowing my father's mistake, and how, through the house system, it cost our clan dearly, I cannot rest until I have redeemed him. And through redeeming him, redeemed myself. I want to tear down the walls and heal the rift between the two houses, in the hope that my father's guilt will be forgotten amid my success and the new Hyuga unity. I want to live peacefully amidst my clansfolk again, and I know that Keisuke's plan can make it happen. This is not merely a notice of my defection. It is also a plea for your understanding and, hopefully, your help. I know that you take your responsibility to protect the Hyuga secrets seriously. I know that there is much pressure upon you from the elder Hyuga already because of the acceptance of a weak girl as your heir, and that to push your luck by helping us will risk all that you have obtained in your leadership. But is it worth putting a curse upon our own brethren, forcing them to take hits for our leaders? Is it worth having more than half of us live in fear, afraid to speak against the system for fear of instant death through the seals on their foreheads, afraid of being chosen as a martyr for the Byakugan? Is it worth making people like myself and Neji doubt the worth of our own fathers? Keisuke will force you to take a side soon. I ask you to consider before you take the wrong one. Hiyashi crumpled the letter and thrust it roughly back into the attendant's hands. I apologize, Haruka, he said. I chose my side when I accepted the leadership of this clan. Then he looked toward the pond, searching within the waters, and the waning sunlight reflected upon it for some glimpse of the future, of what was to become of the fragile stability that the Hyuga painstakingly maintained. Hinata. He thought. They plan to use her against me, against the clan system, and they will use Uzumaki Naruto to do it. That demon child. So at least some of the rumors I have heard about them are true. He grimaced, thinking of what might result from the chaos ahead. He had only recently accepted Hinata as his daughter. He did not want to lose her so soon afterward, especially not to the unstable container of Kyubi. a Jinchuriki under the manipulative guidance of the great father of the first Hyuga. No, he reassured himself, it cannot be possible. The great father is most assuredly dead, and Hinata knows better than to court a young man without my permission. Haruka must have been brainwashed, hypnotized, or coerced in some way. I will find out what it is. For the first time since they had settled over the village, lightning thundered within the black clouds above. Naruto-kun. Hinata's breath caught in her chest, and the heat rose unbidden to her head. Fortunately, her door was closed and locked. It would not do to have anybody walk into her chamber and see the suspicious red face or the photo that had caused it. The photo in question, along with the several others that had been in the envelope, now lay before her on her bed, illuminated by the soft lamplight. It depicted Naruto in all his shinobi glory, and in very little else. Most of the others were similar images, though taken in different places. Naruto with his shirt torn to shreds, unleashing the Rasengan upon an off-guard foe in an arena challenge. Naruto in a contest of strength, heaving a heavy barrel on his back and running to the finish line dressed only in boxer shorts decorated with blue sky and orange suns. Naruto meditating with Keisuke in a waterfall, covering himself with only his 9 shining chakra tails. Naruto passed out in a dumpster, naked, with a ramen bowl over his delicates. Where this last one had come from, Hinata didn't think she wanted to ask, but other than that, the pictures were masterfully and tastefully taken. Haruka's words came back to her. If you're going to pass up the chance, I suppose I can at least offer you some consolation. As if this would help anyone forget a crush. These pictures were like an advertisement, holding in her trembling hand the well-defined abdomen, the hard and muscular thighs, the compact yet powerful biceps, and the tanned skin bearing the occasional battle scar, which was worn proudly like a badge of honor. Hinata knew she was going to be having very wild dreams tonight. Wild and explicit. Hyuga Hanabi's thoughts and feelings about her older sister had never been stable. Rather, they were dynamic, changing with time as Hinata did. When Hanabi first learned to think as a sentient human being, she looked up to Hinata, who was a kind and soft-spoken, likable person. In those early days, the two sisters had shared a powerful, loving family bond. When their father began to express his disappointment at his older daughter's weakness, and begun focusing more on Hanabi's training, the youngest Hyuga had watched her sister retreat into her own sad world, and had mixed feelings. Part of her pitied her beloved older sibling, wanted to reach out to her, help her out of the darkness. The other part of her felt elated at her superior ability, at how she was the one that father always paid attention to now. It was this latter part that took precedence in this era, as Hiyashi had awarded her little time away from her training. He seemed to be trying to correct his mistakes with his new apprentice. Now that Hinata was in the spotlight again, and steadily improving on her way to the seat of power, Hanabi felt pressure to keep up. But also, she had noticed the change in her sister's attitude, the new positive, progressive drive that she had obtained. This drive brought Hinata into the height of her ability, and made Hanabi both jealous of and happy for her. They still rarely spoke to each other, both of them had extremely tight training schedules and missions still, and addressed each other stiffly and formally when they did meet. But no longer did Hinata cringe in fear and sadness in her presence, nor did Hanabi draw herself up haughtily and look upon her with pity when she passed. In short, their relationship was one of neutrality and understanding, thought with little actual contact. But each one cared enough for the other to know when something was amiss. Thus Hanabi, as generally the earliest riser in the house, knew that not all was in line when she heard Hinata hurriedly packing her gear within her room. Normally, her elder sister would have just finished her morning exercises with their cousin, Neji, and gone to breakfast. Yet today she had not. Probably a mission, Hanabi thought. Something, however, did not seem to be right, and Hanabi just couldn't put a finger on what it was. She pondered a moment, then decided that it had been a while since they had spoken anyway, and opened the door. Hanabi noticed with interest that Hinata, surprised at her unannounced entrance, looked around like a frightened deer and hurriedly closed her bedside drawer. Then, seeing that it was only her sister, she relaxed and turned to greet her. Ohayou gozaimasu, Hanabi-ne-san. Ohayou, Oni-san, returned Hanabi. You'll be leaving on a mission today?
Ah, no, not exactly. It is more like a favor that I am doing, for a very good friend, Hinata said.
Hanabi considered, then decided it was believable. Hinata was popular these days, and had many friends in the village, not all of whom were shinobi, and Hinata was the type of kind person who would lend a hand to less able villagers if she was asked. Hanabi herself had never seen Hinata gear herself up for such a favor, but then Hanabi rarely saw her in any circumstance, so perhaps this was a more regular occurrence than she surmised. Hanabi warmed inwardly. She always had admired her sister's capacity for kindness, which had persisted even in the days when Hinata was in more need of help than any of the people she gave it to. "I see," she said, then turned away. "Well, I don't want to be in your way, Onisan, and I have my own schedule to follow. So, I will take my leave." Hinata raised herself up, secured her pack to her shoulders, and moved for the door herself. She smiled cheerily at Hanabi, bid her good day and good luck, and left. Hanabi began moving off to the yard for her first solitary practice session. Then she had a thought. What was Onisan hiding in that drawer? If it was something to do with this favor, wouldn't she have taken it with her? Curious, Hanabi retraced her steps and re-entered her older sister's room, crossed the floor to the other side of her bed, and opened the drawer. Squinting to see the contents in the dim light, she turned on the bedside lamp. And almost had her jaw hit the floor. She lifted the photographs from the drawer and flipped through them, astonished. Looking at each one, her face steadily became more colorful. Onisan. She was keeping this from us for how long? She stood in place for a long time, looking at the pictures over and over, cogs spinning rapidly in her brain, trying to understand. Onisan. She breathed. Then the cogs hit a snag and she wondered aloud, does father know? A deep voice behind her asked, do I know what, Hanabi? Ooh. You're Laate. Yeah, well. I had to spend the morning convincing Guy that he was a shinobi again, explained Kakashi. It wasn't far from the truth. Guy had, apparently, taken quite a liking to his dynamic alter ego, the civilian who had been rescued by Keisuke, and Kakashi had spent his morning trying to evade him so that he could go and buy Jiraiya's latest novel in peace before coming to the meeting spot. Liar! Yelled Sakura. What a load of crap, Naruto exclaimed. Just because Ero Sennin has time to write again doesn't mean you have an excuse make us wait 2 hours. What if Sass? That bastard's already packed up and left. What would you say then, huh? Kakashi looked upon his 2 former students with a great smile on his masked face. It was the closest they had been to the good old days in almost 3 years. Naruto and Sakura berating him for tardiness, united in the first show of teamwork in Old Team 7 in ages, and the third member of the group regarding the exchange silently, without getting involved. Granted, Hinata didn't perfectly fill the role of the quiet, brooding, superiority-complexing Uchiha, but she was most definitely better than nothing. And both Naruto and Sakura got along very well with her, which would certainly not be bad for their teamwork in this unofficial mission. Now remember, we don't even know if he's there, or even if he ever was. So said your tragic double, reminded the Junin. All we are doing is going in, finding out what we can, and getting out. We want to avoid combat if at all possible. I have a map of the facility from Enbu Records. This should be a quick and clean operation, if we don't run into any snags. HMPH, grunted Naruto, folding his arms and looking sternly at him. Still not an excuse for wasting our time. Kakashi, too happy to have his team back to be exasperated, motioned for them to follow him, then took off running into the forest. Ooh. It's dark, said Sakura, stepping down into the dank corridor from the hidden entrance. Should we light our gas torches? Sakura, that might be risky if anyone's home, said Naruto. If he is here, I don't want the bastard to know we're coming until we're on top of him, ready to bash his face in. That's probably right, she replied, impressed that Naruto was actually considering stealth as his first option rather than opting to charge in with all guns blazing, then hiding only when at a clear disadvantage. But even with the map, it will be difficult to find anything if we can't see. Anyo. I might be able to help, said Hinata. Practice had improved her mastery of the Byakugan to the point where she could see fairly well even in the very faintest of light. Except in a sealed room with no light at all. Hinata was never blinded. The light from the entrance would be sufficient for a long ways into the dungeon. She focused her chakra and snapped on her dujutsu. Byakugan. Oh, you can see even when it's this dark, Hinata? Said Naruto. Amazing. Luckily, it was too dark for Naruto to see, or he might have worried that she was growing ill because of her near luminous red face. Ah, I see, said Sakura, so you can help Kakashi-sensei navigate this place for us, huh, Hinata-chan? A good thing, since it would be bad for me to try to use my Sharingan and waste my chakra, remarked Kakashi. Well, you lead the way then, Hinata. Hi, I will. Pleased to be of such help to her two friends, Hinata took the map and began leading them on, silently as possible, to the heart of the once abandoned lair. All of the members of the team moved without sound and, knowing the great importance of the mission, with a great tensity. Their old comrade grew closer with each step they took. Ooh! It's empty, Hinata said, breaking the long silence. They had reached the door to the main laboratory, and Hinata had peered as far through it as she could, checking for any sign of activity. Stay frosty, said Kakashi. It may not be entirely abandoned, and if it is, it may still be trapped. I got it, Sensei, said Naruto. He pushed on the heavy door, but it did not budge. He tried again, harder, still to no avail. He had his ear in Kakashi's direction. Should I? Kakashi pondered, then asked, Hinata, you're sure there's nothing alive in there? Hi, Kakashi-sensei. He sighed. This would give away their cover, but they wouldn't learn anything otherwise. Do it, Naruto. The swirling ball of chakra took form in Naruto's hand, filling the stone hallway with its flickering blue light. With a hard forward thrust, the blonde brought its force to bear on the heavy door. Rasengan. Sakura, Kakashi, and Hinata took cover behind Naruto as the door was ground to pieces, sending stone chips flying everywhere. When the dust cleared, all was as quiet. No alarms sounded, no warning lights blared, no punji trap dropped from the ceiling to skewer them, and nothing exploded. It was as silent as a tomb. Well, Kakashi said, if there is anyone here, they'll know about us by now. Sakura lit a torch. Well, if that's the case, then we ought to look around quickly, before they get here. Hinata and Kakashi also lit their gas torches, and Naruto called forth his 9 tails of light, illuminating the chamber in soft blue. As he strode into the room, he put them before himself, waving them through the air, along the ground, the ceiling, and the walls, testing for traps everywhere he went. Seems safe enough, he said. The others followed, and they began to take stock of their surroundings. The room was fairly small, certainly not a place to breed hundreds of Naruto clones. On the main table, however, there was the corpse of a pale-skinned young man with dark hair. The spitting image of NO234 as Naruto had last seen him. The body was strapped to the table and spread-eagled, an expression of agony on its face. Apparently, the clone had died in a final test of the product's durability. On the walls, there were many charts, bearing statistics for this sample or that, measuring results for changes in one variable or another, a single chart for every week of experimentation. They went back at least for 12 weeks. So, Sasuke had been plotting his clone assault for at least 3 months before it actually hit, Kakashi mused. I wonder what purpose it had. Other than to cause chaos and confusion in the village? Sakura asked. I don't know. Maybe Orochimaru wanted to see how strong we truly are. Or maybe, Hinata put in the confusion, they were trying to complete some other objective?
That makes a little sense, said Naruto thoughtfully, but I haven't gotten wind of anyone or anything important dead or missing. Oh, maybe it was a diversion so that they could infiltrate our secret places, and just set up for their next move. Kakashi nodded. A logical explanation, Naruto. There are many places in Konoha that one could hide, and not all of them are known to our people. Getting to some of these places, like clan compounds, concealed basements in shops, etc., while the shinobi patrols are unhindered might indeed be difficult for more than one person. Perhaps whatever scheme is in the making requires that multiple agents be in place in multiple positions. Wow, you figured that out on your own, Naruto? Sakura asked. The new Naruto was making a better and better impression on her.
I didn't hang around such smart people like Keisuke Ni-san and Haruka Ne-chan for 2 years without profit, you know. Naruto beamed at her. Then, for no conscious reason, he turned and beamed at Hinata. Ah, she said, seeing the almost expectant look on his face, yes, it was very clever of you, Naruto-kun. For some reason, Naruto felt very satisfied at that comment. He'd felt satisfied at having Sakura's acknowledgement, but this seemed to boost his ego even more. At any rate, Kakashi continued, it doesn't look like Sasuke is here. Probably he or one of his officers used to be coordinating the attack. But it seems abandoned now. They have no more use for the Naruto clones. Naruto hung his head. Damn it, he said. I thought for sure we'd find some clue to where he's hiding. Don't give up, Naruto, said Sakura. There's got to be some evidence somewhere. We're just looking in the wrong place. Her face was set in grave determination. She had waited long enough, and this, at least, was some progress. That's right, Naruto-kun, said Hinata encouragingly. I'm sure there are plenty of clues in the village, hiding under our noses. I can help you find them. Naruto's head perked back up, looking less pained. Yeah, I guess so. Thanks, Sakura. Thank you, Hinata. I'll stay here, do a little more sniffing around, Kakashi said. Kachiyose no Jutsu. A pack of nindogs materialized in the dark room, and their noses twitched, already picking up the strange and unfamiliar scents in the air. You guys head back up to the surface. There isn't much left you can do here. Naruto's face betrayed one last pang of frustration, then settled into its usual confident, determined expression. All right, Kakashi-sensei. Let us know if you find anything weird. Outside the entrance to the facility, the three teenage shinobi discussed their next move. If you're right, Naruto, then he could be anywhere in the village right now, sighed Sakura. This meant a lot of searching to do, more searching than they could accomplish in a day without arousing suspicion. It's all right. We'll definitely find him. I can get Keisuke and Haruka to lend us their help, and maybe Ero Sennin if he's still in town. Plus, we have Hinata's help. That'll speed up the searching a lot. Naruto-kun, said Hinata, proud that she could be so useful to them. I'll do everything I can, my best effort. Naruto gave her his trademark fox-like grin, saying, I know, Hinata. We all will, for that dumb bastard Sake. For now, Sakura suggested, we should split up and look casually around different areas in the village. It would be too suspicious if we all walked around together with our eyes peeled wide. Yes, put in Hinata, that is probably a good idea. She stopped when she saw the gleam in Sakura's eye. She knew what was coming. She could recognize that sadistic look anywhere. Then, Hinata, said Sakura in a voice that was almost sickeningly sweet, why don't you take Naruto and go look in the center part of the village? You might meet up with Keisuke-san there, too, and give him the news. Hinata reacted predictably. Light blushing, deer in the headlights' eyes, hesitation to respond. It was a hesitation that invited interruption. Unfortunately, said a voice from behind them, Hinata-sama must decline, as she will be coming with us. The voice belonged to a Hyuga branch member, one of three who had silently appeared at their backs. He regarded them with a straight face, critical silver eyes, and an authoritative posture. His voice had a commanding timbre, and the regal-looking robes that he wore enhanced the image of authority. Naruto, having never been one to heed authority just because the possessor wore fancy clothes, replied in his standard manner. With a question. Why not? The branch house captain shifted his gaze to the Kyuubi's jailer, and that gaze turned cold. He looked at Naruto with a glare that said, Get out of the way, little fox devil. Naruto recognized the look and glared back with eyes that read, Make me, big talker. You don't scare me. The captain answered in a tone equally calm as before, Hinata-sama has urgent business to attend to at home. Hiyashi-sama's orders. Hinata stepped forward. Thank you, Captain Hiroto. Please tell my father that I will return shortly. I'm afraid, Hinata-sama, that is not possible, replied the captain sternly. Hiyashi-sama sent us with orders to return with you at once, and to accept no other response than total cooperation. Oh, Hinata said simply. Then she asked, Why? We will leave now, Hinata-sama, said Captain Hiroto, ignoring the question. He clasped Hinata's arm and lurched forward. Hinata gave a small yelp and struggled in his grip. Hey! Naruto shouted, causing him to turn to him again. Is that any way to treat your future leader? I don't think so. Seeing the menacing glare in Hiroto's eyes, Sakura nudged her teammate. Hey, Naruto, don't you think it would be safer not to bother with those Hyuga? They look like they mean business. So what? Naruto retorted angrily. They waltz in, all high and mighty, boss around their next ruler, and just yank her off like that without telling her why. Sorry, but that doesn't fly with me. They don't respect their own superiors, so why should I respect them? Hinata's face was pale with fear. They were branch housers, but Hiroto's team was the best among them. Hiashi's elite guard, each one the equal of any 3 Junin-level ninja in the village. Only the Anbu were tougher, and Hiroto was on par with them. Naruto-kun, she said, it's all right, really. No, it's not, it's obvious you don't want to go with them, at least not without being told why. You have a right to know why you're being called off, and the right to get there on your own 2 feet rather than being dragged around like a rag doll. Naruto spat on the ground, a show of open defiance against the branch captain. A long, tense moment passed where the two stared each other down, Naruto's iron will clashing with the cold confidence and power of Hiroto. Finally, the captain half-flung Hinata back toward her friends. Are you satisfied now, young devil? Hell no, said Naruto. Now you need to apologize for mistreating your superior. She is not my commander yet, boy. Hiroto's gaze was cold steel piercing into Naruto's heart. Doesn't matter, replied Naruto, even if she isn't, she's still human. Nobody deserves to be handled like that. Hinata flushed, both in admiration for the blonde shinobi and out of fear for his life. Hiroto's patience only went so far, and she had seen him severely injure Junin-level shinobi, nearly to the point of death, when he was angered. Naruto-kun. Naruto. Sakura, Hinata, you leave this jerk to me. Nobody's going to treat my friend like that and go unpunished. Not while I'm alive. Hiroto stood silent for a few seconds, then motioned for his subordinates to back down. They did so, hesitantly. One of them looked at him nervously. Captain. Stay back, he replied. I don't need your corpse piled on top of the brats here by accident. He slid easily into his Juken stance, facing Naruto with hate in his eyes. You will have your wish, boy. Defend yourself. If you can. The end. Now we will see you in the